Beneath a cerulean sky and amidst the lush greenery, a magnificent cathedral stood tall, its intricate architecture hinting at stories untold. As someone reflected on their perceived happiness, Diana L. Parrish, the only daughter of the Marquis, radiated a serene beauty in her wedding gown, a delicate bouquet clutched in her hands. Calypso d'Ernst, the Grand Duke, stood composed and elegant, a hint of intrigue in his lavender eyes as he adjusted his impeccably tailored suit. Overshadowed by a father's overwhelming love, a woman found herself at the altar, a bittersweet smile playing on her lips as she entered a marriage of convenience. With the Grand Duke, bathed in the soft glow of the chapel, the bride, a vision in white, stood beside her groom, a quiet contentment radiating from her despite unseen circumstances. Under a twilight sky, in a serene garden, the silver-haired man gently draped a sheer shawl over the shoulders of the expectant blonde, their love a quiet understanding. Tears welled in Eli's eyes as she tenderly held the baby with silver hair, whispering her gratitude for the chance to have met Catherine in a sunlit room. Calypso introduced a young girl in a lavender dress as his daughter, Catherine, to the two elegantly dressed women at a table laden with delicacies. A bittersweet nostalgia washed over the narrator, remembering days filled with pure, unadulterated joy. Under a brilliant cerulean sky, a woman in a flowing gown, shielded by a lacy parasol, glided across a vibrant green meadow, a whispered name, Catherine, trailing behind her like a soft question on the wind. Catherine, her pale dress dusted with crimson droplets, choked back a sob, her trembling hands reaching for her face. As she whispered desperately for her mother, tragedy struck Catherine, plunging her into darkness as a poisonous herb stole her sight. In a grand, ornate room, Calypso in a sharp suit lowered his gloved hand from his face, a subtle gesture revealing a troubled expression, while two women, one in a light blue dress and the other with vibrant red hair and a darker ensemble, watched with hushed anticipation, their hands clasped near their faces. A frail figure, draped in white, lay in bed, a tear tracing a path through the flush on her cheek as she cried out for her mother. She wondered despairingly if she would ever again experience the simple joys of nature. Like blooming flowers and chirping birds, a gentle hand brushed away a tear from the silver-haired person's flushed cheek, a choked sob escaping their lips, as the words "my poor baby" hung heavy in the air. With a bittersweet smile and glistening eyes, the blonde-haired woman wondered aloud if there was truly nothing that could be done, her voice barely a whisper against the turbulent backdrop of swirling blue. Someone called out to Alicia, a flicker of curiosity in their tone. The vibrant redhead, sharply dressed in a business suit, turned her head with a slightly surprised and inquisitive expression. The woman with the vibrant auburn ponytail, dressed in a sharp business suit, hesitated, a troubled expression shadowing her face as she began to speak, uncertainty lacing her voice. A hushed whisper filled the air, hinting at the possibility of transferring someone's vision using holy power. Tears streamed down Eli's face, her breath hitching in her throat as if a dam of sorrow had finally burst within her. Silent tears traced paths down her cheek, a bitter taste on her trembling lips. A sweet yet urgent request for a carriage to the temple echoed through the grand halls. Startled, the silver-haired man in formal attire spun around, a shock, "My lady." Escaping his lips, a single tear traced a path down her cheek, her lips parted in silent anguish. Diana, dressed in a light blue gown, gently pressed her hand to her chest, a soft smile gracing her lips as tears welled in her eyes, confessing her profound love for Catherine, a love that surpassed even her own life. A tremor of realization ran through her, a whispered understanding of Catherine's experience. Though a flicker of fear touched her, she steeled herself with a quiet determination. It was all for someone else, a sacrifice willingly made. In the grand hall of the imperial palace, a blindfolded blonde woman with a delicate lace choker stood serenely, the January air thick with anticipation. Alicia, the red-haired physician, attended to her blonde friend with a gentle touch and a knowing smile, her care deepening in the wake of some unspoken event. As life took a turn for the better, the lady in the voluminous gown glided through the opulent hallway, a picture of serenity. Everything changed the moment she overheard those three words, "I love you," whispered in a tone that made her heart clench with a sudden, inexplicable ache. A heartfelt confession of love filled the air, directed at Calypso. Her response, though soft, echoed the same deep sentiment, confirming the mutual affection. He swept the flame-haired girl into a dizzying dip, a chuckle escaping his lips as her surprised gasp echoed through the opulent ballroom. With a cascade of golden hair shielding her face, she stammered a desperate plea, Dear, that's not true, right?" Doubts gnawed at her, a desperate whisper echoing in the vast emptiness between them. Could she have possibly misheard what he just said? A mischievous glint flickered in her eye as a soft chuckle escaped her lips. With a dramatic swirl of her golden hair, The young woman in the ruffled, pale dress stumbled back, a visible tremor running through her as if struck by an unseen force. He addressed her with a mockingly affectionate "Dear Alicia," his expression a mixture of amusement and something darker, while she, the fiery-haired Alicia, responded with a barely audible scoff, her eyes flashing with defiance, blinded by a white cloth. Ali's face crumpled with a mixture of anguish and the bitter realization of someone's foolish actions. A woman with flowing auburn hair, a delicate choker adorning her neck, reclined with a knowing smirk, clearly amused by someone's obliviousness despite her blatant hints. Trembling hands reached out, gripping the polished floorboards as if seeking an anchor. Tears streamed down Ali's face as she choked out a desperate, heart-wrenching plea. The silver-haired man, dressed in a crisp white shirt, froze, a flicker of confusion in his violet eyes as he softly questioned, "Dear." A desperate cry for guards echoed through the halls, followed by the hurried footsteps of someone in a dark uniform rushing to respond. Tears streamed down the Grand Duchess's face as guards roughly seized her arms. The command escort the Grand Duchess echoing through the opulent hall. Abandoned and alone, the former Grand Duchess crumpled onto the dusty rug, the chilling words "farewell" echoing in the desolate room. Ali, her elegant dress pulling around her, sat alone in the deepening twilight, a palpable sorrow etched on her face. Lost in a dusty, cobweb-filled room, she sat on the floor, the passage of time a blur after a traumatic event. Bare feet peeked out from beneath the covers, the figure in bed bewildered by the stale bread left for them. A flicker of hope ignited in their mind. Could it be Catherine? Showing concern despite their circumstances, a worried voice echoed, questioning her well-being. Distorted and glitching, a figure, presumably female, appeared to be in distress. He wondered aloud, with a touch of bitter self-awareness, if her tears were truly caused by his absence. Ali, engulfed in shadows, sobbed uncontrollably, her hands muffling the pain cries. Guilt gnawed at him, the thought of her vulnerability. A heavy weight, a young girl, dressed in a pale pink gown, huddled fearfully in a dimly lit room. Approaching footsteps echoed through the quiet space, the hem of a long, white dress trailing behind the unseen figure. A chilling voice echoed with cruel amusement, questioning someone's unexpected survival as a blonde woman's wide, terrified eyes flickered open in disbelief, hands trembling as they reached up to touch her face. A young woman with silvery hair and a delicate white dress stood bathed in soft light, a flicker of recognition in her violet eyes as a familiar voice reached her. Startled, someone gasped the name Catherine. In disbelief, with a chillingly sweet tone, the pink-haired girl questioned the towering woman in black about her continued survival. A cruel smirk playing on her lips, the flame-haired woman, adorned in a dark, lavish gown, met the whispered word "mother" with a chillingly amused smirk, her expression suggesting a cruel satisfaction that her presumed demise had been greatly exaggerated. Alicia's eyes widened in terror, her face flushed with a mixture of fear and shock as someone called her name. A woman, her voice laced with desperation, reached out for another, crying out "Alicia." As she stumbled forward, the elegant woman in black, face serene yet cold, watched impassively as the younger, fairer-haired woman collapsed at her feet. In a dimly lit, cobweb-laden room, one girl crumpled on the floor, tears streaming down her face as another, radiating a chilling composure, coldly declared her stupidity. A third, smaller girl watched the scene unfold, a subtle smirk playing on her lips. A shocking revelation struck Ali like a physical blow. "Catherine, isn't it your daughter?" Disbelief warred with dawning horror in her tear-filled eyes as she whispered, "What?" The truth, brutal and undeniable, crashed down upon her. "That can't be true." With a sharp, almost cruel smile, Ali cut her mother off mid-sentence, her words a chilling dismissal. With a chilling realization, the platinum-haired woman lamented that all she had to do was feign blindness. Her tear-streaked face twisted with a bitter understanding as she accused someone of foolishly offering their trust, symbolized by their eyes, pale hands clenched against the wooden floor, their owner whispering in disbelief, "No, that's impossible." A cunning smile played on the flame-haired woman's lips as she pondered the shocking possibility of Catherine not being someone's daughter. She mused sarcastically about the concept of her daughter, with a mocking tone, her expression a mix of amusement and intrigue. A fiery glint flickered in the redhead's eye as she subtly wiped a tear. Under the cloak of twilight, a man in a dark uniform, his face strained with effort, hauled a heavy sack over his shoulder. In a dimly lit, dusty room, a cloaked figure hunched over a small doll, a blue glow emanating from them and an unsettling aura filling the space. Tears welled in her wide, light eyes, a flicker of shock and dawning realization painting her face. A sly smile played on the woman's lips as she pondered who dared to disobey their new master and secretly bring in food. Her hands trembled as they clutched the silken sheets, her grip tightening in a silent expression of anguish, despite a lifetime spent in the shadows as a lowly maid. A woman with cascading golden hair, clad in a delicate nightgown, stirred in her bed, a knowing smirk playing on her lips as if a hidden truth about her noble blood was about to be revealed. Tears streamed down Eli's face as a chilling thought crossed her mind. How could she have possibly discovered the truth? Eli lay in bed, her hand gently cupping her cheek. As the shocking revelation surfaced, she was the real daughter, switched at birth. Tears streamed down Eli's face, her anguished expression betraying a deep, wrenching sorrow. A chilling voice offered a twisted mercy, allowing the fallen figure in the elegant gown to die beside her true daughter. A grim reunion in the twilight beneath the trees. A chilling scream echoed through the dimly lit rafters as a shadowy figure, cloaked and hidden, issued a sinister command to scatter poison powder. A distraught cry of "My daughter" pierced the somber air as a figure crumpled on the floor, their body racked with pain. Tears streamed down Eli's face as she cradled someone close, a heart-wrenching apology escaping her lips for failing to protect them. Overcome with grief and guilt, she continued to weep, the whispered words "I'm so sorry" a testament to her despair. A harsh accusation hung in the air, condemning someone for protecting their supposedly worthless mother. Eli, clad in a pale dress, coughed weakly, her body slumped against a dark surface, her breath coming in ragged gasps. A low moan escaped her lips, the sound heavy with pain and exhaustion. A wounded woman, her blonde hair framing a face etched with pain, lay amidst scattered papers, a single tear tracing a path through the grime on her cheek. A lone figure huddled on the floor, enveloped in a swirling violet mist, their form obscured by shadows and the encroaching darkness. A wistful thought drifted through the air, tinged with the bittersweet scent of blossoms. If there is such a thing as the afterlife. Amidst a flurry of delicate pink petals, a desperate plea hung in the air. Would you come back to me then? Clutching the weeping girl close, the woman vowed with a fierce, heartbroken determination that she would recognize her next time. A desperate plea, barely a whisper, hung in the air as to hands intertwined, seeking solace on a cold, etched floor. With a frustrated huff, the blonde-haired woman slumped onto the edge of the opulent bed, the luxurious room a stark contrast to her apparent distress. A heart-wrenching sob tore from her throat, her golden hair a shimmering cascade around her anguished face. Confusion flickered across Eli's face, her delicate hands clenching the fabric of her dress as a sudden, unspoken question hung heavy in the air. Two white doves soared through the bright, sunlit sky, their wings beating rhythmically against the soft blue canvas. Blinded by a sudden, unexpected light, the golden-haired woman whispered a questioning light, with a mixture of confusion and alarm in her voice, clutching the sheets. They awoke in stunned bewilderment, a whispered question hanging in the air. Sunlight streamed into a lavishly decorated room, illuminating pale green furniture and ornate details. The perspective shifted upwards, showcasing a glittering chandelier that dominated the vast, high-ceiling space, hinting at wealth and grandeur. Confusion hung heavy in the air as a maid, pulling back the curtains in a lavish bedroom, revealed a startling scene that left her questioning everything. A maid hesitantly approached the golden-haired lady in the opulent room, softly inquiring if she was awake. A troubled thought surfaced, the unsettling feeling that the intense experience was far too real to be a mere dream. From her opulent bed, a woman with long, flowing hair weakly inquired about the date. A maid, standing respectfully nearby, informed her it was the first day of the Empire's 22nd year. The woman in bed then realized with a poignant pang that this day marked the anniversary of her lost sight. A spectral figure, draped in shadowy tendrils, realized with chilling certainty that her demise was orchestrated by Alicia and Catherine. Stunned disbelief washed over the ghostly form as the implications sank in. Tears streamed down her face, blurring the edges of the tattered blindfold as a flicker of hope ignited within her. Could it be? Had she returned to the past with her vision restored? As dark tendrils curled around the prone, light-haired woman, a desperate whisper, filled with fierce determination, escaped her lips. She would save her daughter. Ally in white, seemingly disoriented, requested to be taken to the maid's quarters, her words prompting a surprise pardon from the maid attending her. A cunning smile played on the lips of the elegantly dressed woman as she touched a gloved finger to her chin, the order to watch Diana closely hanging heavy in the air, followed by the chilling reminder that even blindness wouldn't strip the Grand Duchess of her power. A maid, her expression a mixture of resolve and concern, offered guidance to an unseen person. A flicker of suspicion crossed her face as she wondered about the hidden motives of others. Beneath drying linens, a group of maids stood assembled, awaiting their lady. As someone respectfully announced her imminent arrival, the golden-haired woman in the emerald gown turned to address the line of maids. a hint of apology in her tone as she acknowledged their likely busy schedules. With a knowing smirk, the red-haired woman mused about Alicia's past, certain of something significant. Ally beside her, seemingly unaware of the other's thoughts, solemnly revealed that her daughter had grown up as a maid in the Grand Duke's household. A loaf of stale bread was offered by one pair of elegant hands to another, much rougher set, belonging to someone the same age as Catherine, a poignant 15 years old. A glimmer of determination flickered in her eyes as she decided to pursue a seemingly insignificant lead. A blonde woman, adorned in a dark green dress and a shimmering necklace, gathered her audience, a sly smile playing on her lips as she began to reveal the reason for their summons. A blonde woman in a green dress, her eyes covered by a white band, addressed a group of maids, revealing her recent loss of sight and requesting their continued loyalty. The maids, clearly moved by their mistress's vulnerability, reacted with whispers and murmurs of concern and reassurance. One maid, particularly touched, remarked that the situation was unfolding exactly as another, presumably Lady Alicia, had predicted. A cruel thought, laced with dark humor, flitted across someone's mind about a blind Grand Duchess. The bandaged woman's startling eyes widened in sudden, silent alarm. A dark-haired maid in a crisp uniform regarded her colleagues with an unnerving sense of unfamiliarity. A blonde woman, perhaps blinded or simply veiled, stood in a long, light dress, a broom at her feet, lost in disturbing thought. Ally realized with a jolt that the entire household staff had changed during her affliction. Under a vibrant, violet-hued canopy, a regal figure, likely the Grand Duchess, stood bathed in an ethereal glow, seemingly unfazed by the whispers dismissing her as insignificant, while a playful suggestion about mixing work and pleasure hung in the air. Followed by a pregnant silence, a woman, her voice tinged with confusion, noted the absence of her maids. Her companion revealed that the servants from her former household had been relocated within the Grand Duke's residence. Startled, she questioned the move, her hand rising to her chest, only to be reassured by the other person that it was a temporary measure, born of a need for trusted staff. The elegant lady in the grand gown swept into the room, leaving the three maids bowing in her wake, the murmurs of respect echoing in the vast space. A distressed blonde woman, draped in elegant finery, sought comfort in the arms of a red-haired woman who offered soothing words and the promise of reliable support. Ally, overcome with gratitude, embraced the redhead, a physician whose presence clearly meant the world to her, despite her demanding profession. Trapped and suspended like a marionette, the young woman in the ornate gown recalled a time when she believed her benefactors were kind, a stark contrast to the chilling realization that she was merely a pawn in a meticulously crafted scheme. Fighting an inner turmoil, she resolved to maintain control. Dismissing her maid with a gesture and a curt instruction to return to her duties, the lady received a respectful assurance. The maid, her face a mask of studied indifference, downplayed a situation, secretly deciding against informing Lady Alicia. A grand, opulent palace shimmered under the clear blue sky. With a rustle of fabric and a determined step, a young woman in a flowing gown strode across a richly patterned carpet. A gasp echoed through the opulent hall as the young woman in the blue dress turned to face the elegantly dressed blonde and her maid on the grand staircase. Catherine, her expression a mix of surprise and concern, softly breathed the name Catherine. The blonde noblewoman, radiating a sense of casual disdain, dismissed the maid with a curt gesture, her attention fully on the silver-haired woman bowing before her. A gloved hand reached out and swiftly covered the blindfolded woman's mouth, a flicker of suspicion crossing the observer's mind. With a playful shh and a finger pressed to her lips, the silver-haired woman hinted at a secret. Her light blue dress rustled softly as she tiptoed away, her small, buckled shoes making barely a sound on the patterned rug. The blonde-haired woman, her green dress swirling around her, descended the grand staircase, a flicker of icy determination in her startlingly pale eyes. The blonde-haired woman in the emerald gown collapsed, her fall punctuated by a desperate cry, "Your Grace." A sly smile played on the silver-haired woman's lips as a mischievous plan seemed to form in her mind. The opulent ballroom, a glittering backdrop to her scheming. A maid, her face etched with concern, rushed to the aid of a young girl in a blue dress who had stumbled on the opulent red carpet. With a cascade of golden hair framing her face, she confessed a profound truth, her voice laced with an unspoken emotion. A profound love for Catherine, surpassing all others, hung heavy in the air, almost palpable. A betrayed wife seethed, her gaze fixed on a portrait of her unfaithful husband, his mistress, her childhood friend, and the impostor child who had replaced her true daughter. The woman in the elegant green gown crumpled to the floor, a discarded cane lying nearby, her mind wrestling with the painful realization she needed to confront the truth, and fast. Elegant shoes tap nervously against a luxurious rug, their owner haunted by the fear of another unseen attack. Overwhelmed by the gravity of the unspoken, the blonde-haired woman in the elegant green gown brought her hands to her face, a mixture of apprehension and distress clouding her delicate features. Ally, dressed in a flowing pale blue gown, stood with her back to the viewer, a quiet desperation radiating from her form as she wondered aloud how she could possibly find her true daughter. A hand, clad in a dark suit sleeve, reached out to a gleaming white door, a silent prelude to a meeting unknown. With a nervous tremor in her voice, the blonde noblewoman gestured for someone to enter, her grip tightening on the elegant cane she held. The elegant redhead, clad in a flowing navy gown, swept out of the opulent room, her silver-haired companion trailing behind with a troubled air. In the quiet aftermath, a blonde woman, adorned in a green dress, sat slumped in a chair, her eyes closed as if in a trance, a whispered pair of names hanging heavy in the air. The silver-haired man, dressed in formal attire, inquired after the lady's well-being with a concerned expression. The fiery-haired woman, adorned in a shimmering gown, offered a sly smile, a hint of mischief in her eyes, though her vision was blurred. A venomous thought pierced the blonde noblewoman's mind as she registered the brazen entrance of two figures. Sly smirk played on his lips as he questioned her intent, his voice laced with playful disbelief. The redhead, bathed in a mysterious purple light, met his gaze with a knowing smile, her gloved hand rising to her neck in a gesture that oozed confidence and perhaps a hint of challenge. He held her close, a reassuring smile playing on his lips, as she looked at him, visibly relieved by some unspoken words. As a veiled woman watched from her throne, Calypso pulled a fiery redhead close, murmuring his relief that all was well before their lips met in a passionate embrace. With a gentle, yet heavy, tone, someone acknowledged Eli's struggles, offering support should she need anything. Tears streamed down her face, a stark contrast to the elegant bandage obscuring one eye, her silence speaking volumes of her inner turmoil. Lies, the unseen speaker exclaimed, their voice laced with disbelief and fury. A pale hand tightened, its grip on a polished cane, knuckles whitening under the pressure. A silent tremor of barely contained rage. The elegant blonde, adorned with jewels, seethed with barely contained fury, her whispered filthy hypocrites. Laced with venom, a noble woman, elegant in a dark, patterned gown, subtly dismissed a couple locked in a tender embrace, feigning fatigue. The man, with his arm around the red-haired woman, seemed startled by the abrupt request to leave. The silver-haired man offered a gentle, almost conspiratorial smile and a soft sleep well to the auburn-haired woman beside him. A grand, ornate door, shimmering with an ethereal light, stood slightly ajar, hinting at secrets within. Within the grand hall, a woman in a flowing gown watched a departing couple, her quiet observation tinged with a hint of resentment as she muttered about their lingering departure, only to be met with a teasing remark about her own apparent enjoyment of the scene. A dark, sleek cane clattered to the tile floor with a heavy thud accompanied by pained gasps. A lone figure in a flowing green gown stood on a grand balcony, a soft groan escaping her lips as she gazed at the shimmering scene below. Under a starlit sky, a woman with cascading blonde hair, clad in an elegant dark dress, looked down, her face etched with a mix of pain and determination, as if struggling with a heavy decision. With newfound resolve, she vowed to do something, her expression hardening. The weight of her unspoken promise hung in the air, culminating in a chilling declaration of unforgiveness. The young woman in the teal dress swept through the grand library, a sense of purpose in her stride. A quill danced across a sheet of parchment, illuminated by the soft glow of a nearby candle, leaving a trail of elegant script. In a dimly lit, opulent room, Ally, adorned in a green gown, meticulously penned a letter, a slight furrow in her brow hinting at a weighty decision. Chilling promise of retribution hung in the air, underscored by the image of a sealed letter, hinting at a carefully orchestrated plan for revenge. Bathed in a golden light, Diana Elperesht, a serene figure in flowing white, emanated a quiet grace from her opulent surroundings. Born into the wealthy Peresht family, her life had been a testament to kindness and compassion, a gentle flame spreading warmth wherever she went. Ally, dressed in a modest yet elegant outfit, offered a teddy bear to a small girl in an orphanage, her gentle smile reflecting her compassionate nature. Later, leading a donation event, she supervised as others organized supplies, her expression hinting at both authority and warmth. Surrounded by cascading symbols of wealth and prestige, a powerful statement declared that true value lay beyond material possessions and accolades. Amidst the opulent ballroom, the blonde noblewoman in a vibrant blue gown dramatically addressed the hushed crowd, a hint of defiance in her gesture, basking in the warmth of universal adoration. The young woman with chestnut hair beamed, her joy echoing in the admiring gazes of the townsfolk. Bathed in celestial light, the saintess of the Presh family, her golden hair cascading around her, offered a serene smile, a picture of divine grace. Her fame resonated even within the hallowed halls of the magic tower. Its cloaked figures gathered before a glowing sigil. The imposing tower stood tall amidst a serene landscape, a beacon in a meritocratic society where status held no sway. The crimson-haired woman, holding a mystical tome, granted entry with a regal come-in. A man in flowing white robes, startled by the announcement of a letter's arrival, turned from the door he was about to open, a mixture of curiosity and apprehension in his eyes as he held the unopened missive. Reclining amidst the opulent grandeur of his library, the crimson-haired nobleman inquired about a newly arrived letter. His curiosity piqued. It bore the seal of the Marquis of Peresht, a request for a tutor echoing within its folded depths. The crimson-haired woman, clad in dark robes, paused, a book with a pentagram on its cover clutched in her hand, a flicker of surprise in her eyes as she breathed a soft, questioning what. A powerful figure desired his daughter to be schooled in the arcane arts, within the opulent confines of a palace. The subject of the saintess of the Presh family, renowned for her abilities, arose, contemplating the gravity of the situation. The speaker pondered dispatching a mage of suitable skill to instruct the young noblewoman. A refusal, sharp and final, hung in the air as a hand reached out, only to recoil in surprise at the sight of something sparkling within a jewelry box. With a subtle gesture and a knowing smile, the red-haired figure in elegant attire declared their intention to handle the matter personally. A closer look revealed a determined glint in their eyes as they reaffirmed their resolve to go alone. Stunned, someone stammered in disbelief as a majestic tower, touched by the light of a clear sky, loomed before them. The sheer audacity of a proposed plan sinking in dot in a sunlit room. A blonde woman in an elaborate gown leaned over a vanity, seemingly lost in thought. Later, holding a small vial, she pondered who her father might send. With all correspondence under scrutiny, a clandestine message was carefully crafted. Disguised as an innocuous greeting, a delicate hand held a vial of shimmering blue liquid, a testament to childhood studies of magic and alchemy that now proved invaluable. Drawn to the window by an unseen force, the blonde noblewoman whispered magic, a sense of wonder and perhaps a touch of apprehension in her gaze. As she paused her laments about a marriage interrupting something, with a thoughtful gaze, her glasses reflecting an inner turmoil, resolved to rebuild her life from the ground up. A faint, uncertain call echoed through the opulent hallway, causing the maids to pause and exchange curious glances. A maid stifled a yawn, seemingly exhausted from her duties. Before a noblewoman, another maid stood attentively, confirming an order with a respectful "Yes, your grace." The elegant blonde woman in a flowing gown commanded someone to summon Alicia and Catherine for tea immediately. Startled, the person she addressed could only stammer a confused pardon. The noblewoman's tone sharpened with impatience as she repeated her request, the unspoken question hanging heavy in the air. The maid, captivated by the radiant figure adorned in jewels, questioned the identity of the transformed woman before her, unable to reconcile her with the person she had encountered the day before. Her gaze sharp behind her glasses demanded an answer with a palpable tension. Her impatience turned to icy indignation as she accused someone of daring to defy her grand authority. The lady in the elegant gown quickly dismissed a suggestion, her tone firm and resolute. The maid, seemingly startled by the decisiveness, promptly offered to relay the news, her hasty departure echoing through the opulent hall. A steaming cup of tea and delicate pastries awaited the noble's arrival, a silent invitation to indulge. A blonde woman, elegantly dressed, addressed someone across the table, seemingly aware of their visual impairment, but urging them to adapt to the situation. The person at the table, clad in dark attire, looked upwards with a slightly strained expression, as if acknowledging the speaker's words. Two maids, in crisp uniforms, stood respectfully with a tea cart observing the exchange. With a gentle smile and a soft "Thank you, the elegant woman with fiery hair expressed her gratitude. Alicia, daughter of Viscount Blair, offered a subtle, knowing smile, a hint of secrets playing in her eyes. Two young women, one in a flowing blue gown and the other in a simple green dress, clasped hands, a silent acknowledgement of their deep bond as dearest childhood friends. Their hands clasped, their faces radiant with shared joy at the news of her arrival as the estate's new resident doctor. The blonde-haired woman sat alone, perched high on an ornate chair, a wistful expression on her face as she muttered like fools under her breath, seemingly lost in thought amidst the grandeur of the setting. The blonde-haired girl, her face etched with a subtle weariness, announced her return. Accusations hung heavy in the air as one noblewoman, dressed in elegant black, addressed another, clad in shimmering gold with the pointed title Lady Catherine. before bitterly lamenting how her own daughter had been reduced to a servant in this grand setting. A condescending question about social status hung in the air, followed by a sharp cry of Catherine's name, drawing Eli's shocked attention. With a swift, decisive movement, a hand clad in white sent a delicate teapot tumbling, its fragrant contents exploding in a shower of amber liquid. The elegant woman in the dark dress recoiled from her teacup, a startled cry escaping her lips as a sudden burning sensation overwhelmed her. Catherine gasped, eyes wide with dawning realization as the maids bustled past, oblivious to her sudden shock. Panic flared as a young woman, her golden hair flowing, burst onto the scene with alarming news of the injured doctor. A silver-haired woman, presumably Ally, pointed accusingly at the seated redhead, whose elegant black dress did little to hide her apparent guilt and burgeoning remorse. Ally, her eyes covered by bandages, lamented her lost sight, still struggling to adapt to the darkness. Consumed by anger, a red-haired woman seethed with resentment, her thoughts a venomous whisper against someone she clearly despised. Relieved, the woman in the elegant black dress announced her intention to attend to her burns, receiving a gentle nod of encouragement from Ally nearby. A pregnant noblewoman sat pensively in a sun-drenched courtyard as a maid swept nearby, the silence punctuated only by unspoken anxieties. A hesitant request hung in the air, directed at a woman named Catherine, whose startled indicated she was caught off guard, her hair spilling forward as she bent down. Catherine, her face a mixture of seriousness and expectation, asked for a personal favor that seemed to fluster the other. The recipient, clearly taken aback, questioned the request, pointing out the readily available staff. He pleaded with her to fill his mornings with the bright melody of her voice, a small request, he implied, for such a simple pleasure. A cruel smile touched Eli's lips as she mused on the inherited eyes of her unsuspecting victim. Catherine, dressed in lavender, grimaced, a sharp pain clearly evident in her features as she muttered about the unwelcome sensation. With a hint of resignation, the young woman with golden hair and spectacles softly acquiesced to her mother's request. The golden-haired woman offered her assistance, a subtle glint in her eyes suggesting a hidden agenda. Beneath the vibrant, hopeful sky, a gentle farewell echoed, promising a reunion at dawn. From a high vantage point, a lone figure sat at an ornate desk within a grand, opulent space, seemingly lost in thought amidst the luxurious solitude. Cradled in the opulent embrace of a green velvet settee, the silver-haired man winced, his discomfort a lingering testament to a mysterious woman's actions, while his fiery-haired companion offered a soft murmur of sympathy with a worried "let me see, how bad is it?" The silver-haired man leaned closer, only to be met with the vibrant redhead's mischievous, giggling deflection, a playful calypso, really, escaping her lips. A hand rested possessively on the richly clad shoulder of a woman with fiery red hair, a worried murmur suggesting the arrival of another woman would be troublesome, followed by a swift reassurance that Diana wouldn't be appearing. A woman in a golden gown addressed someone as dear, her voice echoing in the opulent room. While the redhead and Calypso watched, their reactions a mixture of surprise and apprehension. Their silent shock reverberated through the room, startled. The silver-haired man in elegant attire stammered a surprised greeting to the vibrant redhead, who appeared unexpectedly. The silver-haired man mused on the unexpected presence of someone who usually steered clear of his office, claiming not to want to disturb him. A veiled woman, adorned in jewels, stood with a pensive expression, a dawning realization flickering behind the fabric covering her eyes. Overcome with emotion, someone in elegant attire stifled a sob, their shoulders trembling slightly as they inhaled sharply. The distressed young woman, dressed in elegant gold, confided in her companions. A sharply dressed gentleman with silver hair and a striking redhead, in a black gown, about the maid's blatant disregard for her presence. She revealed, hurt evident in her voice, how they cruelly mocked her behind her back, calling her the blind grand. Tears streamed down Eli's face, a bandage wrapped around her head. As she sobbed, overwhelmed by an unbearable burden, his steely gaze hardened as he threatened dismissal. A chilling vow met with the redhead's shocked gasp, and a desperate question about the considerable bribe she'd paid. The fiery-haired woman watched with a mixture of apprehension and anger as a hand, presumably male, reached towards her. The elegant woman in black, with fiery orange hair, stood tall, radiating disapproval towards the seated blonde, deeming her ungrateful. With a dramatic flourish, the fiery-haired woman in the elegant dark gown swept out of the opulent hall, leaving stunned guards in her wake. With a weighty dear, a plea echoed through the opulent room, requesting the dismissal of the maids she had brought upon her marriage. Ally, her face pale and bandaged, confronted the impeccably dressed silver-haired man about his betrayal, her voice laced with a mixture of hurt and accusation. He, with a smirk playing on his lips, readily admitted to his deceitful actions. His jaw clenched, a steely glint in his eye. He muttered about contacting the Marquis's estate, a plan clearly forming in his mind. A sharp weight hung in the air, leaving Ally with bandaged wounds looking up at the silver-haired man in confusion. The silver-haired man observed a woman, her face strikingly familiar, a perfect mirror of the Marchioness of Presh de Pirsch, and a chill settled over him, realizing he'd never felt a flicker of warmth towards her. The imposing figure of the Marquis, his influence radiating like the jewels adorning his attire, loomed over the image of a fair-haired young woman, her innocent gaze hinting at a pawn in a larger game. A voice, unseen but firm, declared with cold pragmatism that the girl's connection to the powerful Marquis was the sole motivation for her selection, silencing any other possible explanation. In a grand, opulent setting, a bride and groom stood before a magnificent archway, their expressions veiled, yet the air thrummed with a sense of calculated transaction rather than genuine affection, a silent acknowledgement of Diana's surprising utility. Overflowing chest of jewels and gold glittered, a testament to the lavish support the newlyweds received from the Marquisate. The silver-haired man, elegant in his dark suit and ornate brooch, expressed relief that the duchy was finally prospering. Holding a document, a confident smirk touched his lips as he mused that his new business venture was now certain to flourish. A steely gaze, shadowed by the weight of unspoken words, hinted at a turbulent storm brewing beneath the silver-haired gentleman's composed facade. A tense silence hung heavy in the opulent room as two figures, seated opposite each other, exchanged hushed, serious words. A tense refusal hung in the air. A finger pointed accusingly at the silver-haired man seated on an ornate sofa. The blonde, their face a mask of conflicted emotions, echoed the denial with a sharp, definitive gesture. Consumed by ambition, the silver-haired man in a sharp suit declared his true desire, the immense power of House Peresht, not hindered by an interfering old man's meddling. The silver-haired man, his face etched with worry, pressed his hand to his forehead, determined to keep a devastating secret from someone dear. Ally, her face pale and bandaged, pondered whether summoning someone named Shane and Milan would suffice. A flicker of uncertainty in her wide, unnervingly bright eyes. He accepted her gesture of affection with a grateful murmur, a hint of something unreadable in his silver eyes. Ally, her face partially obscured by bandages, leaned against the dark-haired man, a mixture of vulnerability and strength in her wide eyes. A simple good hung in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. A palpable sense of anticipation settled over them as a chilling thought echoed. Now it really begins. Under the watchful gaze of a night owl, the blonde lady, bathed in the soft glow of the grand room, absorbed herself in the words of a book. A weary hand reached for the topmost book in a towering stack, its owner declaring the study session over. The elegant blonde, adorned in a gown fit for royalty, stood in a grand, light-filled room. A flicker of surprise and perhaps a hint of annoyance crossing her face as she realized the unusual silence. No one had summoned her. Ally, with a flicker of resignation in her pale blue eyes, glumly accepted her apparent insignificance. In a grand, chandelier-lit hall, someone declared their intention to replace the entire household staff. Haunted by memories of hardship, Ally lay dejectedly, recalling days of hunger before her journey back in time. With a subtle rustle of fabric, the blonde noblewoman turned, her back on the other, her posture suggesting a mix of weariness and dismissal. Under the silvery glow of a full moon, Ally gazed pensively at the sprawling estate below. A sudden noise startled her, a flicker of curiosity in her wide eyes. She turned her head sharply, a questioning escaping her lips as she scanned the moonlit gardens. A sudden, powerful gust of wind swept through the room, swirling around the startled blonde woman in a pale gown, catching her off guard as papers flew round her. A delicate, slippered foot, adorned with pearls and a flower, took a hesitant step. A soft gasp escaping the wearer's lips, a gloved hand reached out, summoning a swirling aura of light, and a murmur of surprise escaped the person's lips as they witnessed an unexpected phenomenon. The crimson-haired man gazed down at Ally with a tender smile, marveling at how his very first student had blossomed into such a breathtaking lady. Amidst a shower of shimmering light, the crimson-haired man bowed dramatically before the blonde lady, his words a formal yet heartfelt declaration of his pleasure in meeting her. The blonde lady, her eyes wide with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension, softly touched her fingers to her lips and whispered, "Who are you?" Beneath the mesmerizing, moonlit sky, the crimson-haired figure, adorned in an elaborate, dark suit, responded with a surprised me to the revelation that their father had sent them as a potential successor to the Tower Master. The crimson-haired woman, arms crossed and a knowing smirk playing on her lips, seemed to have caught the blonde off guard with a sudden revelation. leaving her wide-eyed as she declared her new role as the girls' teacher. The blonde lady, adorned in finery, reacted with a mixture of disbelief and exasperation at her father's apparent decision regarding the next tower master. Her silent thought betrayed a weary familiarity with his stubborn nature. A delicate hand held another, a silent question hanging in the air about the ownership of a seemingly significant item, demanding to know why it was worn. Under a starlit sky, a confession hung heavy in the air, a revelation of lost sight due to injury, met with a soft, surprised really. A flicker of confusion crossed the crimson-haired man's face, as a strange thought caught him off guard. The blonde, adorned with a delicate necklace, looked up at the crimson-haired figure with a sudden, dawning realization flickering in her bright eyes, with a playful "just kidding" and a subtle melody escaping their lips. The crimson-haired figure exuded an enigmatic charm, leaving the observer intrigued, murmuring, "He's unusual." Relief washed over Ally as she realized her secret remained safe for now. A gloved hand delicately tended to a lock of golden hair against a backdrop of twinkling night sky. The blonde-haired individual expressed gratitude, acknowledging an unspoken act of service, though insisting they could have managed it themselves. Under a starlit sky, the crimson-haired figure, cloaked in darkness, turned to the smaller, lighter figure beside them, who had hesitantly addressed them with a formal title. The taller figure gently dismissed the formality, encouraging a more comfortable address. With a subtle, knowing smile, the crimson-haired figure introduced himself as Rory D. Constantine, his name echoing with an air of nobility. With a gentle, "All right, Rory," a blindfold was delicately placed over Eli's eyes, obscuring the starry night. Amidst a backdrop of vibrant roses, a proposition for weekly lessons at noon was met with a decisive offer to personally visit the duchy. The richly dressed figure confessed their difficulty walking, dismissing the need for any special assistance with a quiet dignity. With a subtle gesture and a reassuring smile, the crimson-haired man encouraged Ally to prioritize her comfort. Observing the mage's casual air amidst the grand setting, the elegantly dressed woman questioned his apparent disregard for formalities. With a hint of curiosity in her tone, Ally, a delicate bandage adorning her face, brushed her fingers against her neck, a small, secretive smile playing on her lips, as she confessed her unexpected fondness for her current situation. The crimson-haired figure offered a sly smile, a hint of anticipation in their voice as they spoke of upcoming lessons. A quiet groan of displeasure followed from an unseen character. The crimson-haired man, a figure of authority in his dark, embellished uniform, watched with concern as Ally before him swayed, a soft gasp escaping her lips. With a sly smile and a glint of determination in her eyes, the crimson-haired woman declared her intent to start anew. Another figure, shrouded in shadows, reached for a vial and a small bottle, a desperate desire to rewrite the past evident in their trembling hands. Startled, the blonde-haired woman in an elaborate gown touched her temple, a flicker of confusion in her bright eyes. A strange voice echoed in her mind, making her question its origin with a mix of fear and intrigue. Under a mesmerizing full moon, a magnificent palace adorned with blue domes and intricate details shimmered in the night, hinting at untold stories. Within, the maid with ash-blonde hair gasped, her hand flying to her mouth in stunned disbelief at some shocking revelation. Another maid, her dark hair contrasting sharply with her white cap, trembled, her face etched with worry and confusion as she struggled to comprehend the unfolding events. In a lavishly decorated room, bathed in ethereal light, a blonde noblewoman sat pensively on the edge of a grand bed, while a maid, clad in dark attire, approached with a look of serious concern, hinting at unbelievable news. With a trembling hand outstretched, the elegant blonde woman in a lavish gown insisted that every word she'd spoken was the absolute truth, naming Milan and Shane with a chilling finality. A worried maid, her hand gently clasping her mistress's, questioned the elegant noblewoman's next move with a mix of apprehension and concern in her eyes. A blonde woman, adorned in a shimmering blue gown and elaborate jewelry, clutched her chest, a determined glint in her bright eyes as she vowed revenge. With a sinister glint in his eye, the silver-haired man vowed vengeance upon the beast, his resolve unwavering, no matter the cost. The maid, startled, whispered a name, a question hanging in the air. A maid rushed to the noblewoman, addressing her with a respectful, urgent tone. The lady's expression shifted, revealing a flicker of pain as she reflected on a hidden hardship. The maid, her eyes wide with fervent loyalty, pleaded for a chance to assist, her hand clasped to her chest. Two maids in pristine uniforms bowed their heads submissively, pledging unwavering loyalty to an unseen superior. A blonde-haired figure, presumably their mistress, softly uttered two names, tinged with a mixture of affection and concern. The blonde noblewoman, adorned in a golden gown, expressed her sincere gratitude with a gentle smile and a soft gaze. In a grand, blue-hued room, a woman in a flowing gown sat on a chaise lounge, while another, dressed in a dark, more modest attire, knelt before her, the air thick with unspoken tension after a weighty revelation. Then, a hesitant request hung in the air, a plea for assistance directed at both women, promising further intrigue. A line of maids, pristine in their uniforms, stood attentively as they received congratulations on their new positions at the Grand Duke's residence. The maids, clad in crisp uniforms, held small dark pouches, their expressions a mix of solemnity and apprehension. A hand presented a similar pouch, a voice inquiring if everyone had received theirs. With a subtle smile, Ally in the elegant blue dress presented a small, dark pouch to someone, her words implying it contained their monthly earnings. Astonishment filled the maids' faces as they beheld the glittering jewels presented as their salary, a sum far exceeding their expectations. The mistress of the house, clutching a shimmering, dark pouch, made a solemn vow. Holding a handful of glittering jewels, the elegant figure addressed the assembled maids, promising them respect and affection above all others. A blonde noblewoman, adorned in a delicate blue gown, held a small glittering gem, her expression hinting at a secret knowledge about pouches filled with similar treasures. To maids, clad in traditional garb, exchanged a look of pregnant anticipation, a silent however, hanging in the air, gems scattered, tossed by a richly dressed figure as maids in uniform looked on. A high heel, elegant and deadly, crushed the glittering jewels under its weight. Bathed in a dramatic light, the blonde noblewoman, her expression obscured, stood regally, her elegant gown flowing around her. Her words hung in the air, a veiled promise, loyalty would be rewarded. With a veiled gaze and an air of solemn warning, the blonde noblewoman commanded loyalty, reminding her subject that their allegiance belonged solely to Diana d'Ernst. Before a crowd of bowed heads and covered faces, the blonde noblewoman, bathed in a soft light, received an affirmative "Yes, Your Grace." From her attendants, a serene smile touched Ally's lips, a subtle shift in her delicate features hinting at a hidden thought. With an air of quiet determination, the blonde noblewoman, her elaborate gown trailing behind her, swept past the maids, her cane tapping a steady rhythm against the opulent palace floor. The blonde duchess, startled, turned sharply at the urgent cry. The maids, heartbroken and bewildered, pleaded with the departing blonde lady, questioning her sudden abandonment and desperately seeking an explanation for their perceived wrongdoing. Clutching his coat, she pleaded desperately for him to take them back. With a commanding step back, the blue-haired maid brandished a gleaming sword, her protective stance shielding a startled blonde noblewoman as another maid recoiled in fear. The silver-haired woman, face contorted in fury, berated the blonde for daring to raise her voice. Within those hallowed halls, a tense silence descended, broken only by a chilling command to listen closely. A noblewoman, draped in finery, commanded Shane to replace all the current maids with new ones. The maids, stark in their white uniforms, stood silently before their mistress, acknowledging the decree with a respectful "Yes, Your Grace." The noblewoman, with an air of quiet determination, further instructed Shane to find her a knight. The maid, her face etched with concern, wondered aloud if they could borrow a knight from the Marquis's household. A maid, prim and proper, insisted that the chosen individual couldn't be a formally registered knight. The speaker revealed a plan to disguise the blonde-haired young woman as a maid, a clever ploy to conceal her true identity. The silver-haired maid, her expression serious, was entrusted with a task of great significance. Belinda, seemingly exasperated, called a halt to some unseen unfolding drama, her tone hinting at a frustrating lack of understanding from the offending parties. A blonde woman, likely Belinda herself, stood with arms crossed, observing a group of maids who appeared oblivious to their transgression. The maids, kneeling in a line, seemed contrite but confused, their bowed heads and downcast expressions indicating their shame, but also a lack of comprehension. Ally, her face a mask of disbelief, recalled the sting of betrayal, how they'd abandoned her for Alicia and a handful of coins. Now, they dared to seek forgiveness, a request met with icy disdain. With a fierce determination, the maid in the darker uniform vowed to ban certain individuals from the premises forever. A woman in a flowing emerald green gown approached to other women dressed in lighter hues, the heavy fabric of her skirt whispering against the cobblestones as nuns looked on from the side. With a disdainful tsk, the fiery-haired woman in an elegant dark dress scolded someone unseen for their pathetic blunder, reminding them of her prior warning to behave. A sense of unease washed over the redhead as she walked away, a creeping feeling that things were spiraling out of control, a whispered "damn it," escaping her lips. A majestic palace shimmered under the clear blue sky, its domes gleaming in the sunlight. A sharp accusation hung in the air. questioning the noble's decision to keep the head maid. Yulia, employed, a document bearing her likeness. Clutched tightly in hand, intrigued by Alicia's schemes, the blonde meticulously examined a document. A silent command echoing the need for close surveillance on a potential informant. The noblewoman, her voice laced with impatience, pressed the maid for an answer to her earlier question, causing the maid to stammer nervously. The elegant blonde woman, adorned in jewels and finery, listened with a worried frown as she received the disheartening news about her missing daughter. A cloaked figure reported their fruitless search for a slender young woman with work-worn hands, despite following specific instructions. The 15-year-old girl was not found on the estate, prompting a wider search across the Grand Duchy, with a nod of approval and a quiet yes. Keep up the good work, the seated lady in the elegant dress dismissed the two maids who eagerly affirmed their understanding. The elegant blonde, her face etched with a mixture of concern and suspicion, wondered where the other woman could be hiding. With a sinister smile and a chilling cry of Alicia, the crimson-haired woman blindfolded the vulnerable blonde. With a regal air, the blonde-haired woman commanded her maid to fetch Catherine, a subtle tension underlying her seemingly casual request. The maid, her dark hair neatly framed by her cap, bowed her head slightly and respectfully agreed to carry out the order. Catherine, adorned in a frilly blue dress, gasped in utter disbelief, her eyes wide with shock. Exasperated, she groaned, clearly facing a recurring, unwelcome situation. Catherine in the frilly dress appeared to request a book for her grace, but the maid in black and white, startled, protested that she had already fetched one earlier that day. Excusing herself politely, the silver-haired woman turned to leave, only to pause, intrigued by the maid's sudden appearance. Clutching their pristine white fabric, someone seethed with barely contained fury, silenced by a cruel taunt about their blindness, and plotted revenge against the future duchess, their mother's rival. With a furious sweep of her hand and a venomous "you'll be nothing," Catherine in the ornate white dress sent teacups and books flying, her face contorted with rage. A teacup shattered, spraying crimson liquid across the floor. A foot clad in a pale blue slipper tentatively stepped forward amidst the chaos. Startled by a sharp command, Catherine in a pale blue dress whirled around in the grand library. A door creaked open, revealing a glimpse of an opulent, book-lined study, addressed as Princess. The young blonde woman with wide, questioning eyes appeared, a hint of apprehension in her delicate features as she inquired if she had been summoned. Catherine, her face a mask of fury, yanked the blonde girl by her hair, demanding she come out. A blonde woman in a light blue dress dramatically overturned a table, scattering food and startling Catherine nearby. A stern command to clean up the mess hung in the air, leaving the unseen recipient silently facing the shattered remnants of what appeared to be a precious object amidst a spill of something viscous and unidentifiable. With a solemn expression, the golden-haired girl seemed to reluctantly confirm her understanding, her name Issel, hanging heavily in the air. In a sunlit, opulent room, a blonde woman in a flowing gown delicately sipped tea, a soft mother, echoing in the air, her gaze distant as if lost in thought. Catherine, dressed in a delicate blue and white gown, announced her arrival. The blonde, adorned in gold, responded with a slightly accusatory observation about the other's tardiness, a subtle mix of annoyance and relief flitting across her face. A young girl, adorned in a delicate white dress, apologized profusely for her forgetfulness to a seated woman with flowing blonde hair, who seemed unfazed, privately plotting to use her charm to smooth things over. With a sly smile playing on her lips, Catherine, fiddling with a light blue ribbon, innocently asked for forgiveness for dozing off while reading. Catherine's name appeared, a silent confirmation of her identity. Ally, adorned in a delicate, light-colored gown, fixed a chilling glare on someone unseen, her words a sharp reprimand about the importance of punctuality for a lady. The silver-haired woman in the elegant dress seemed to grasp a sudden, unsettling realization, her expression shifting to one of concern as she wondered aloud about someone's recent behavior. With a touch of regal authority, the elegantly dressed woman reminded the other, seated demurely, of the importance of punctuality. The silver-haired woman presented a daunting stack of books for the day's reading, eliciting a shocked and disbelieving gesture from the other person, who clearly hadn't anticipated such a voluminous task. Overwhelmed by the sheer volume of text, the elegantly dressed blonde woman subtly requested assistance, only to be met with indignant disbelief from Catherine, who pointedly reminded her of the readily available maids. Catherine, seemingly pressured by a compliment about her voice, reluctantly agreed to a mysterious request from her mother. A hand, elegant and purposeful, reached out and firmly grasped an ornate, dark book. Catherine, dressed in a pale blue gown, slumped against the plush cushions of the ornate settee, complaining of a sore throat. A young girl, dressed in a light blue dress, announced her boredom from an hour of reading and her desire to stop, while the elegant blonde woman across from her, likely her mother or governess, dryly noted her chronic lack of patience, adding a touch of wistful irony about a past fondness that had blinded her to the child's restless nature. Ally, adorned in a delicate, lacy gown, mused with a subtle smirk, surprised by the speed of events yet acknowledging their conformity to her expectations. A woman, possibly a mother figure, mused aloud that Catherine, now 15, might have been raised with too gentle a hand, a subtle dissatisfaction playing on her lips. With arms crossed, Ally in a flowing gown received confirmation of the young lord's impending visit. Her response was swift and sharp. The visit would be cancelled. A pointed punishment delivered with a cool demeanor. Catherine, her dress a swirl of pale blue, stood aghast, startled what escaping her lips as she recoiled from the sight of the books piled on the ornate table. The blonde seated behind it looking up in stunned disbelief. A blonde woman, her expression troubled, considered the dark-haired man's apparent inability to keep a family promise. He stood with his back slightly towards her, seeming aloof and indifferent to her words. She then lamented his constant excuses, wondering how she could possibly introduce him to a young lord in such a state. The young woman, her face barely visible, whispered young lord with a mixture of awe and apprehension. In a grand hall, amidst opulent decor, a young man in ornate attire, his expression a mixture of anticipation and perhaps a touch of weariness, watched a woman in a delicate gown while another observed from a distance, a ghost of a smile playing on her lips. A flicker of longing crossed his handsome features as he yearned for precious moments alone with the one he desired. Catherine sobbed, her face buried in her hands, the weight of the revealed truth, her parents' lack of connection to the Iberg family, crushing her. Someone observing the scene realized that only this heartbroken young woman could navigate the complicated situation ahead. Overhearing whispers of marriage, Catherine was consumed by regret, wishing she had persevered just a little longer. A single tear escaped her vibrant eye as her hand covered her face, the weight of what could have been heavy on her heart. The elegant woman in white offered a tempting proposition, a future meeting with the young lord if her listener would only comply. The elegant woman, resplendent in her gown, expressed incredulous surprise, while the girl in the pale blue dress offered something small and dark, a gesture met with a warm affirmation of love and belonging. With a bright, sparkling smile, Catherine eagerly promised her mother she'd never be late again, her enthusiasm extending to a sweet offer to continue reading for her too. The blonde, noble woman, adorned with a delicate headpiece, hid a knowing smirk behind her mask, her thoughts consumed by a growing desire, with a thought about how easy it would be to control her. Ally watched as Catherine, dressed in a light blue gown and a matching ribbon in her hair, enthusiastically declared she'd resume reading immediately. Clutching the dark, ornate book, sunlight glinted off the opulent domes and balconies of a grand estate. The ornate gates, framed by wrought iron and lush greenery, stood open, inviting entrance into the privileged world within. The maid, with a sly glint in her golden eyes, reminded her mistress about the magic lessons scheduled for today. The maid, with flowing blue hair, reassured the elegant lady in a peach gown that she would be guarding the garden entrance and to call for her if needed. The lady, touched by the gesture, expressed her gratitude to Belinda. The elegant woman in the flowing gown strolled through the manicured gardens, a cane in her hand, butterflies flitting around her as she decided this serene setting was perfect for her lessons. The elegant blonde, adorned in a delicate, cream-colored dress, glanced at a small trinket in her hand, a subtle tension in her expression as she realized the first lesson was nearly upon them. With a reassuring promise of punctuality, the crimson-haired figure offered a gentle deference to the blonde, their words laced with a subtle care. A hand clutched an ornate pocket watch, its owner wondering if a certain teacher would make another surprising appearance. Determined not to be caught off guard again, they steeled themselves against any sudden arrivals. A pocket watch shimmered, its delicate hands ticking towards a fateful moment. Ally, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and surprise, clutched something precious to her chest as the crimson-haired figure turned towards her, an aura of intensity crackling around them. The crimson-haired man, a mischievous glint in his eyes, greeted a woman with a charming, "Hello, my lady." With a surge of red energy, a foot clad in a dark suit and light shoe came down, striking the ground with powerful finality. With a casual wave and a warm smile, the crimson-haired man greeted Ally in the elegant garden. The crimson-haired man, a mischievous glint in his eyes, leaned towards Ally, a playful lilt in his voice as he informed her of the distinct honor of being his very first student. The woman, adorned in a delicate gown, tilted her head with a soft murmur of surprise. Ally, adorned in a delicate, cream-colored gown, offered a demure smile and a subtly flirtatious "it's an honor," her eyes sparkling with hidden amusement, against the backdrop of a majestic garden with vibrant blue butterflies dancing in the air. A suggestion was made to commence the lesson. Amidst a serene garden setting, a figure with fiery red hair and dark attire offered a young woman in a flowing peach gown a range of magical studies, from offensive and defensive spells to the art of binding. Intrigued, she simply implored him to reveal her true desires for knowledge, leaving the choice hanging in the air. Lost in thought amidst a blooming garden, Ally in spectacles gently touched her cheek, pondering the last time she had wielded magic. Ally, dressed in elegant finery, softly voiced her desire to begin anew, her expression tinged with a hopeful resolve. The crimson-haired man beside her, his attire hinting at a noble status, offered a curt acknowledgement with a subtle smirk playing on his lips. He then gently encouraged her to stand tall and take things one step at a time, his tone betraying a hidden concern. The crimson-haired man, radiating an air of authority, suggested they begin their mana-release practice, a subtle smirk playing on his lips as he looked at Ally beside him. With a soft and agreeable okay, she signaled her readiness, a hint of anticipation in her eyes. Ally, adorned in a delicate white and gold dress, gazed with wide, curious eyes at the swirling flames that danced and flickered in her outstretched hand, marveling at their mesmerizing movement. With a flicker of crimson in their eyes and a flourish of their hand, the crimson-haired figure conjured a flame, turning to the blonde beside them with a knowing smirk, implying the uniqueness of each individual's magical abilities. 6 elements: fire, water, ice, wind, lightning, and earth whirled into existence, a vibrant display of raw magical power. A solemn warning echoed, restricting the use of magic to only that which aligned with one's inherent attribute. The blonde noblewoman, adorned in a delicate, cream-colored gown, declared her element was fire. Intrigued, her companion inquired about the lady's own affinity. A wistful sigh escaped her lips as she confessed hers had been ice. 2 small birds perched on a branch, seemingly encouraged by an unseen voice to take a leap of faith. Ally in the elegant gown seemed to conjure something, a small hum escaping her lips, as the crimson-haired figure watched with a skeptical air. An awkward silence filled the space between them, Ally's cheeks flushing as her magic fizzled out. The other's skepticism now confirmed. It was then, with a touch of self-deprecation, that the dark-haired one admitted they hadn't expected the attempt to succeed in the first place. A gentle hand reached out, a concerned lady accompanying the gesture. The crimson-haired man, his expression serious, gently held Ally's hand, guiding her and drawing out her mana. He instructed her to relax and concentrate, promising a surge of power at her fingertips when the time was right. The elegant blonde, adorned in a shimmering gown, seemed lost in thought, a soft sigh escaping her lips. Suddenly, her gaze sharpened, a determined glint in her eyes as she commanded herself to focus. A surge of power gathered at her fingertips, crackling with blue energy. Footsteps echoed on the stone path, a figure pausing, adorned in ornate trousers and polished shoes. The silver-haired man, clad in a dark, embellished uniform, stood with his back to the viewer, gazing towards a sunlit garden through a wrought iron gate. Amidst a flurry of shimmering, ice-like particles, the blonde noblewoman unleashed a torrent of magical energy, her crimson-haired companion watching with a mixture of awe and concern. The blonde, adorned with delicate jewels, gazed off into the distance, a blush warming her cheeks and a wistful air about her. The blonde, adorned in a delicate gown, beamed as she held the crimson-haired man's hands, a triumphant "I did it," escaping her lips. He, with a gentle smile, reassured her with a praising "See, you're doing great." As their hands intertwined, a concerned voice called out "Madam," as the crimson-haired woman clasped hands with the blonde. A uniformed man observing them with an unreadable expression, the nobleman's face hardened, a flicker of surprise and suspicion flashing in his eyes as he seemed to process some unsettling revelation. The crimson-haired noble, adorned in a grand, dark coat, held Ally's hand, a softer grace escaping her lips as they danced, a mixture of reverence and affection in her gaze. Amidst a palace garden, a curious onlooker inquired about the identity of the red-haired man accompanying a young woman in a delicate pink gown. With a slight pause, the lady introduced the man as Ruri, her magic instructor. As he approached them from a short distance away, the silver-haired man, adorned in ornate military attire, questioned the situation with a stunned magic. Ally, adorned in a delicate white gown, confessed her blindness and inability to read anymore, a wistful smile playing on her lips. Now, seeking a new path, she revealed her intention to delve into the mystical arts of magic. The red-haired woman scoffed, displeasure evident in her posture as she observed the silver-haired man, an ally before her. A flash of vibrant blue eyes, belonging to the redhead, hinted at an unspoken intensity. The silver-haired man's violet gaze held a cool, calculating stare, a silent challenge in the air. Scoffing at some unseen absurdity, Ally, her elegant attire suggesting a noble background, questioned with a condescending smirk whether someone even had the right to be jealous of her. The woman in the elegant gown, hands clasped tightly, was confronted by a crimson-haired figure who accused him of an affair with her friend. Leaving him speechless, Ruri, the crimson-haired figure, was addressed, their subtle smirk hinting at an unspoken understanding. A simple, almost challenging yes escaped their lips, their blue eyes holding a steady gaze. With a graceful gesture, Ally introduced the striking redhead beside her as her husband, Calypso. To the formally dressed man before them, pleasantries were exchanged, a polite veneer over the unspoken tension in the air. The silver-haired man, adorned in ornate attire, looked upon someone with a disapproving frown, his words a sharp reprimand about their lack of manners. The recipient of this criticism, a striking figure with vibrant red hair, responded with a sardonic smirk, their expression suggesting amusement at the other's apparent discomfort. Catherine, her dress adorned with light blue ribbons, turned in surprise, a soft father, escaping her lips as she spotted the approaching trio. The silver-haired man, dressed in ornate attire, appeared startled to find the young girl in a frilly white dress, her hand fluttering to her mouth as he questioned her unexpected presence. Ally, observing Catherine, noted her hoarse voice, a lingering effect from reading aloud earlier. She then gently prompted the girl, Catherine, to offer a greeting with a subtle gesture. Catherine introduced the striking, crimson-haired man as her magic instructor, to which someone off-panel responded with a mildly surprised, almost nonchalant, is that so?" Startled by a sudden address, Catherine in a pale blue dress responded with a hesitant yes. A crimson-haired figure, adorned in ornate attire, mused aloud, a thoughtful touch to their chin, about the striking lack of resemblance between a young woman and her mother. A sharp retort, deemed rude, hung in the air, leaving the silver-haired man taken aback as the woman in blue looked on with concern. Unfazed, the red-haired figure, back turned to the others, calmly justified their blunt statement, claiming it was nothing but the honest truth. His gaze, sharp and intense, pierced her as he uttered the words, a chilling resemblance hanging heavy in the air. The crimson-haired figure, adorned in a dark, ornate coat, mused aloud that something felt peculiar, a subtle smirk playing on their lips. A challenging question followed, demanding to know the precise nature of the perceived rudeness. The silver-haired man gestured, seemingly explaining something to the imposing figure in black, even mentioning magic, before the red-haired individual cut him off with a sigh and a dismissive wave of his hand. The silver-haired nobleman recoiled in alarm as a majestic, fiery phoenix descended, its radiant plumage illuminating the ornate surroundings. Amidst a verdant garden, a figure cloaked in dark finery unleashed a surge of fiery energy, shocking onlookers, while another, clad in silver and blue, demanded an explanation for the sudden display of power. The darkly clad noble retorted with a cutting remark about titles and noble standards, implying the other was out of line. The crimson-haired man, his ornate attire shimmering with gold accents, steepled his fingers, a sly smile playing on his lips as he posed a seemingly innocent question about the Mage Tower's involvement in a certain undisclosed matter. A blindfolded blonde woman, dressed in elegant finery, sensed the presence of an imposing figure with fiery red hair, a power beyond human understanding hanging heavy in the air. The Mage Tower, a towering structure piercing the pastel sky, stood as a testament to magical prowess, its doors open only to those with proven talent. A place where merit trumped all. The crimson-haired figure, adorned in a dark, elegant robe with gold embellishments, stood with a regal air, as an unseen observer noted their imposing presence and influence in a certain place, implying that another, Calypso, seemed insignificant in comparison. A cruel smirk twisted the elaborately dressed man's lips as a chilling chuckle escaped him. A young girl in a pale blue dress was abruptly dismissed by a departing figure cloaked in dark fabric, who claimed a busy schedule. A stern-faced man in an ornate uniform, his silver hair catching the light, then curtly instructed someone named Catherine to also take their leave. The crimson-haired man, adorned in ornate attire, scoffed dismissively at magic, a flicker of fear barely concealed beneath his bravado as Ally beside him watched with wide, uncertain eyes. The elegant woman, her blonde hair gleaming in the sunlight, gently placed a hand on Catherine's shoulder, asking her to stay put for a moment, playful lilt in her voice. The young girl, her innocent eyes wide with curiosity, tilted her head slightly, a soft why? Escaping her lips. The crimson-haired figure, adorned in a dark, regal-looking attire, approached Ruri with a subtly sly smile, requesting a favor. Ruri, seemingly intrigued, inquired about the nature of this mysterious request. The crimson-haired man was asked to include the small girl in his magic lessons, a request that was met with stunned disbelief. Catherine, adorned with a delicate blue ribbon, questioned with a mixture of curiosity and disbelief. Her violet eyes wide, Ally, adorned in a delicate, lacy dress, offered a cryptic reminder about the hereditary nature of magic, a subtle smile playing on her lips. In this world, the gift of magic is a lottery bestowed upon commoners and royalty, slaves and free alike, with no regard for their station. A single, undeniable truth hung in the air: magical talent, when possessed by parents, is inevitably inherited by their children. As a serene, golden-haired baby floated peacefully in a shimmering, ethereal expanse of blue, Ally, elegantly dressed, turned slightly, noticing Catherine's evident anxiety. With a gentle concern in her voice, she inquired if something was troubling the younger woman. Ally, adorned in a delicate, lace-trimmed gown, gazed at the silver-haired child with a cryptic smile playing on her lips, a secret held within her eyes. A sudden thought, tinged with anxiety, crossed her mind. Had something revealed the truth about the child's parentage? Despite a bright, magical display in the sky above, one voice declared a surprising disinterest in the mystic arts, only to be countered by a pragmatic observation of magic's usefulness. The elegant blonde woman, likely a mother figure, reassured the younger, silver-haired girl that her advice wasn't a demand for a specific path. Her touch gentle yet firm. With a cryptic air, she emphasized that her intentions were for the girl's future benefit. Suddenly, a shift in tone. The blonde addressed Catherine, with a sense of urgency and perhaps concern. Catherine, adorned in a pale blue dress, was reminded of her unique position as the sole heir to House Ernst. She was told that her magical abilities would be invaluable when she inherited the Grand Duchy from her father. A teasing reminder of a promised meeting with the young Lord Sawyer hung in the air, punctuated by a hopeful right and a gentle touch. Intrigued, the girl in the light blue dress eagerly agreed to a challenge, a playful glint in her eyes as she wondered aloud if she, too, possessed hidden magical abilities. The crimson-haired woman conceded to her sister's request with a hint of resignation. Ally, dressed in shimmering cream, expressed her gratitude with a gentle smile. With a touch of determination, she declared her intention to begin lessons with Catherine the following week. The young woman with golden hair and piercing blue eyes softly declared her wish to be alone for her lessons, a hint of vulnerability in her tone. A surprised "huh" echoed in response, leaving the air thick with unspoken questions. The crimson-haired man, amidst a swirl of fiery sparks, wore a regretful yet resolute smirk, murmuring about an unfortunate but unavoidable situation. With a casual "see you" and a flicker of arcane energy, a figure vanished, leaving the blonde-haired woman in a flowing pink gown to watch their departure. With an air of quiet contemplation, amidst a backdrop of blooming roses, the elegant blonde woman, adorned in a cream and gold gown, pressed a hand to her chest, a flicker of amusement in her eyes as she reflected on a mischievous teacher. A grand, ornate palace shimmered under the warm glow of the setting sun. Inside, a woman in a rich, dark gown stopped abruptly, her sudden movement causing the three maids behind her to freeze. The flame-haired royal, adorned in a rich purple gown, offered a sly smile in response to the query about her whereabouts, explaining that she couldn't simply disregard the situation with so many eyes upon her. Returning from the garden, the golden-haired woman serenely informed Daly that she had taken the initiative to engage a magic tutor. A mischievous glint in her eye, the woman hinted at a hilarious incident, piquing her companion's curiosity. A blonde woman, adorned in a delicate, light-colored gown, touched her face thoughtfully, a subtle smirk playing on her lips as she mused about Calypso's unexpected jealousy. Confusion flickered in the fiery-haired woman's eyes as she questioned the meaning behind something she just heard. Her expression shifted, hardening as she recounted introducing someone to a teacher, emphasizing the man's furious tone. The red-haired woman, adorned in a regal gown, questioned with a hint of disbelief, a subtle touch to her chin, if that was all it took, while the other, clad in lighter hues, quickly assured her that there must be a misunderstanding. The news of a heated argument between a young man and a teacher stunned the elegant woman in the opulent room, her maids looking on with shared concern. Intrigued, the lady in the ornate gown mused that she had glimpsed a new facet of his personality. Suddenly weary, she excused herself and swept away, her eyes, sharp and intense, locked onto Ally walking away, a mixture of suspicion and resentment simmering within her. The golden-haired woman, radiating confidence, scoffed at an unseen rival's words, her posture suggesting both disdain and amusement. She declared Calypso as hers, certain that he wouldn't be swayed by anyone else. As the red-haired woman, Alicia, walked away, a blonde noblewoman, adorned in intricate lace and pearls, glared at her retreating figure, a chilling promise of retribution hanging in the air. With a steely gaze, she vowed to strip Alicia of everything she held dear. Alicia, looking unwell, arrived at the royal residence, prompting an attendant to inform their highness of her presence and condition. A command was immediately given to admit her. A regal figure, resplendent in a blue gown, paused mid-stride, turning back to address Catherine with a note of concern about the unusual tone in her voice. Catherine, in a ruffled nightgown, exclaimed, almost exasperated that Diana had made her read books. The flame-haired woman, adorned in a rich blue gown, muttered about a daily routine, a hint of weariness in her voice, only to be met with a bewildered "what? Why?" from an unseen questioner. Catherine, her face flushed with indignation, gestured dramatically, recounting how that woman dared cancel a crucial meeting with young Lord Sawyer. Adding insult to injury, she fumed. The woman had then proceeded to scold her, with a chillingly amused ha. The elegant redhead, adorned in rich fabrics and pearls, seethed at the audacity of someone who dared to touch her daughter after having already replaced the household maids. The figures stood within a grand, book-lined room, one plainly dressed and the other in a regal blue gown, their whispered words carrying a weight of concern for the blind girl's height and sensitivity. A chilling agreement settled in the air. The once familiar girl now seemed teetering on the edge of madness, with a thoughtful, almost troubled expression. The silver-haired woman hinted at a significant event, prompting an immediate and intrigued, "What is it?" from an unseen questioner. With a determined air, the vibrant redhead announced to the girl in white that their magical studies would now commence together. Stunned, the fiery-haired woman in the elegant gown stammered in disbelief, her eyes widening with a mixture of shock and burgeoning fury. Her voice, sharp with disbelief, demanded a repetition of the words that had just struck her like a physical blow against the backdrop of a magnificent, sun-kissed palace. Someone cried out Catherine's name, their voice laced with a mixture of urgency and distress. The regal woman, clad in a rich blue gown, looked intently at Catherine, a flicker of surprise in her eyes as she questioned the girl's desire to learn magic. The girl, small and seemingly innocent, quietly confirmed her wish, a hopeful uncertainty in her voice as she wondered about her own potential magical abilities. With a sigh and a touch to her forehead, the vibrant redhead lamented Catherine's lack of magical prowess. Catherine looked on with a mixture of concern and hope, questioning if her brilliant physician mother could find a solution to this magical dilemma. The richly dressed woman warned that deceiving the magic examiners was an impossible feat. A startled gasp escaped the young girl in a simple white dress as she processed the gravity of the situation. The woman continued, her voice laced with a hint of warning, that attempting to fool them with amateur tricks would only arouse suspicion. Trapped in a desperate situation, the silver-haired woman lamented her predicament, realizing she'd crossed a point of no return. A fiery glint flashed in her eye, a hint of something unreadable. The red-haired woman in a long dark dress stood before a grand bookcase, her gaze fixed on the spines, while a smaller figure in a pale nightgown hovered nearby, seemingly hesitant. A flicker of hope ignited in her eyes as she conceded that a slim chance remained, a subtle smirk playing on her lips. The young woman in the pale dress, her hands clasped nervously, inquired why she had been summoned. The darkly clad figure, barely visible but radiating a palpable aura of authority, responded with a chilling command. Obedience was expected, not questions. Flustered and cheeks flushed, Catherine bit her lip, clearly struggling to contain her emotions. 5 years prior, the story began. A stunned whisper of "father" escaped her lips, her hand reaching out to the silver-haired man as another woman watched from the background, a silent observer to the charged moment. Catherine's eyes widened with dawning recognition, a spark of realization electrifying her, as she pieced together a crucial detail about a certain woman's identity. A man called out to Catherine as the fiery-haired woman reached out to a recoiling, pale-haired girl in a pink dress who threatened to tell her mother everything. The fiery-haired woman, adorned in dark attire in a striking purple brooch, began a revelation with a hesitant "you're." Her voice gained strength as she declared Catherine, with pink ribbons in her hair, to be her daughter, leaving the girl stunned. The silver-haired man turned to the small girl in pink, his expression a mixture of disbelief and dawning comprehension as he questioned her identity. She stood firm, her gaze unwavering despite the intensity of his stare, asserting the veracity of her words. Catherine, her face framed by pink ribbons, erupted in disbelief, eyes wide with shock and outrage. Catherine, a woman with long, flowing, auburn hair and a dark, ruffled dress, gripped the shoulders of a smaller, paler girl in a delicate pink gown, her voice low and ominous as she posed a chilling question about the consequences if the girl's true parentage were to be revealed. Overwhelmed with joy, Ally clasped her hands together, her face radiating pure happiness as she called out to her daughter, Catherine. Disgust twisted the blonde noblewoman's features as she recoiled, deeming someone utterly beneath her, a stain on her pristine world. A woman in dark attire, her fiery hair a stark contrast to her somber clothing, praised Catherine's perceptiveness. With a knowing smile, the young girl, her lavender eyes wide with a mixture of apprehension and defiance, then posed a chilling question about Diana's true daughter, her voice barely above a whisper. A lone girl with golden hair sat beneath a tree, seemingly detached from the lively orphanage grounds where the other children frolic, a stark contrast to the narrator's grim observation of her harsh upbringing amongst them. A sly smile played on the ginger-haired woman's lips as she leaned closer to the woman, with silver hair, the ornate brooch at her throat catching the light, a silent testament to their shared secret. Catherine, in a frilly pink dress, was told she needed to be more precious and special to become the real young lady, a heavy expectation hanging in the air around her. Catherine, adorned with ribbons and flowers, smiled knowingly, her thoughts drifting to the real young lady inside a grand, opulent room. The blonde-haired woman, her pale blue dress a stark contrast to the rich surroundings, appeared taken aback, questioning the very notion of her using magic. The silver-haired woman, her expression a mix of defiance and resignation, muttered that she was merely a commoner, incapable of wielding magic. The richly dressed woman, her fiery hair a stark contrast to her dark gown, challenged someone unseen, threatening to bring in a low-ranking mage. The younger girl, her blonde hair framing a surprised face, seemed taken aback by the order to assist her young lady. The blonde girl, dressed simply, processed a shocking request to impersonate a young noblewoman. Her wide, teal eyes held a flicker of uncertainty as she quietly questioned if the lady in question possessed magical abilities. The silver-haired woman dismissed the distraught blonde with a sharp gesture, her face a mask of cold indifference. As rain lashed against the window pane, flustered and seemingly caught off guard, Ally touched her face, a question about her unusual chattiness hanging in the air. The elegant woman in the ornate blue dress, arms crossed, met the unseen speaker's insult with a cool, almost bored expression. Her condescending silence was broken only by a sharp retort, demanding to know who dared address her with such disrespect. Catherine, her face a mask of barely contained frustration, brandished a delicate shoe as if ready to strike, while a stern voice warned that further misbehavior would bring consequences far worse than missing magic lessons. With a harsh "get out of my sight," the blonde-haired woman was left sprawled on the cold floor, the echo of the cruel words ringing in the otherwise silent, opulent room. In a richly adorned room, a woman in a regal blue gown decided that her charge, a young woman in a simple, light dress, would have a tutor starting the next day, her tone carrying an air of finality. A subtle tension hung in the air as the older woman clasped the younger one's hands, a stern warning in her eyes that failure was not an option. The elegant woman in a rich, blue gown, her vibrant red hair cascading down her back, leaned down, her gaze intense as she reminded Catherine, whose hand she held, of her unique and privileged position as Catherine. The girl, looking up with a subtle mix of obedience and perhaps a hint of hidden emotion, softly affirmed her understanding. The next day, bathed in sunlight, Ally in the elegant green dress stood pensively on the balcony, a pair of birds perched nearby, seemingly mirroring her quiet contemplation of the beautiful weather. The golden-haired lady, gazing at the serene landscape, saw an opportunity for some magical practice. With a determined whisper, Ally in the elegant green dress commanded her mind to focus, a shimmering energy swirling around her outstretched hand. With a somber expression and downcast eyes, Ally in the apron extended a hand as if reaching out to something or someone just beyond her grasp. The richly dressed woman questioned the demonstration before her with an expectant "how's that?" The figure in white robes, seemingly a priest or mage, stood silently in contemplation, while a blonde woman in simpler attire observed, gesturing subtly and commenting with a hint of concern that while potential was present, it wasn't being properly realized. A man in white robes, his expression creased with concern, muttered about something being amiss. He puzzled over the situation, realizing that even with limited magical capacity, she should have been able to manifest some minor elemental magic. In a grand library, a young woman with flowing golden hair, dressed in a light blue and white dress, gestured towards the towering bookshelves, a weighty tome held in her other hand, a look of quiet determination on her face, with a barely audible scoff and a smirk playing on her lips. The red-haired woman, adorned with glittering jewels, addressed someone named Diana, a hint of challenge in her voice. With a dismissive wave of his hand, he coldly declared the girl's worthlessness despite her familial connection. The fiery-haired woman in the elegant gown stood with arms crossed, observing the cloaked figure, who calmly declared a disdain for ostentatious magic. The speaker placed their trust in the fiery-haired woman, urging her to release *** by the next week. A subtle smile played on her lips as she touched her chin thoughtfully, confidently vowing to give it her all. Crystalline shards of magic danced in the air above a serene garden, hinting at Catherine's enigmatic intentions. Someone observing the scene wondered what Catherine was planning. Ally in the green dress observed a faint, shimmering magic with a look of weary exasperation, her thoughts betraying her frustration with someone's stubborn persistence despite a clear lack of magical aptitude. A mischievous glint flickered in Ally's eyes, a playful thought sparking amusement as she mused, this might actually be fun. Cloaked and shrouded, a woman cradled a small bundle, her thoughts drifting to the child's inherited talents to hands intertwined, clung to each other in the dim light, a silent testament to a shared fear or sorrow, bathed in a shimmering, ethereal light. The blonde-haired woman in the elegant green gown stood on the balcony, her back to the viewer, overlooking the sprawling formal gardens as if embracing an unseen power. Ally, adorned with a delicate flower corsage, gazed off with a pained expression, murmuring her concern for her poor daughter. Determined, she vowed to do whatever was necessary, her voice barely above a whisper. A startled gasp escaped the young blonde woman, her wide, light eyes hinting at surprise as she was addressed with unexpected reverence. A maid. Her crisp uniform, stark against the ornate backdrop of the grand room, announced the arrival of lunch. A voice, unseen but implied, granted her permission to enter. A maid, clad in a crisp uniform, carefully placed a covered dish onto a polished table, a gesture laden with an unspoken tension. In a grand, opulent dining room, a lady in a flowing green gown offered a polite thank you Milan to the maid, who stood respectfully by the elegantly set table. Ally in the green dress listlessly stirred her soup, her lack of appetite evident. Ally, adorned in a delicate dress and a dark choker, looked up in evident surprise, a soft escaping her lips. A delicate hand, adorned with a hint of a green sleeve, lifted a spoonful of the creamy soup, a single word seemingly hovering above the elegant gesture. A cascade of vibrant red hair framed the observer's view as they watched a young woman in a sage green dress seated at a table, seemingly lost in thought. A blonde woman, elegantly dressed in green, froze mid-meal, a flicker of recognition, or perhaps suspicion, in her eyes as a familiar voice echoed nearby. With a sly smile playing on his lips, the crimson-haired man peered through the window panes, urging your grace to open the door, his tone a curious blend of playful insistence and veiled urgency. Arriving at the opulent, sun-drenched academy, she declared her intention to attend extra classes, a subtle determination in her voice. Ally, elegantly dressed in green, subtly expressed her disappointment about their previous, interrupted encounter. With a hint of gratitude, she thanked Ruri, the imposing figure in black and crimson, for his understanding. The elegant blonde, adorned with a floral corsage, offered a polite inquiry about lunch. The crimson-haired figure, adorned in a dark, ornate outfit, tilted their head with a hint of amusement, a subtle not yet escaping their lips. A thought bubble bloomed elsewhere, expressing uncertainty about the situation and reiterating the original purpose, teaching. Ally in the elegant green dress leaned towards the table, her gesture suggesting a simple desire to share a meal. A maid quietly poured a drink for the red-haired individual seated across from her, oblivious to the intrigued thoughts swirling within their mind. The red-haired person's sharp gaze, fixed upon Ally, hinted at a deeper curiosity and a thirst for knowledge about her, a certain Ruri. The crimson-haired man, adorned in a richly decorated uniform, considered Ally's words with an amused, almost disbelieving smirk, his hand raised thoughtfully to his chin. The blonde, dressed in a stylish green gown, gestured invitingly towards a dish, assuring him of its freshness and warmth, urging him to partake. The crimson-haired woman, a hint of mischief in her violet eyes, regarded something with an approving, almost predatory murmur of "Oh, looks delicious." A lavishly set table, laden with gourmet dishes, hinted at an important occasion. Delicate hands, adorned with elegant jewelry, expertly sliced into a perfectly cooked steak. The clinking of silverware against porcelain, a subtle counterpoint to the silent anticipation hanging in the air. In a lavish, ornate room, bathed in soft light, a red-haired woman sat alone at a grand table, the silence pressing down on her with an almost palpable weight. Ally, her gaze fixed on someone unseen, mused that mages had a reputation for bolder appetites. Her expression shifted, a hint of surprise touching her features, as she silently acknowledged the impeccable table manners of her dining companion. Amidst the opulent splendor of a royal banquet, the crimson-haired man sat seemingly detached, his gaze distant despite the feast before him. Noticing his lack of appetite, Ally across the lavishly set table, a ribbon adorning her hair, softly inquired if he was even partaking in the meal. Across a grand table laden with fine food. The crimson-haired figure noticed his companion's uncanny silence. Intrigued, he questioned the blonde, who demurely explained her refined upbringing. One character revealed they'd grown up in an orphanage. The red-haired individual, dressed in a sharp, dark uniform with gold accents, reacted with a curious, slightly amused "Oh, really?" a subtle smirk playing on their lips. They learned that the other person had eventually found their parents' ally, seated at a lavishly set table, clasped her hands together, a flicker of regret crossing her face as she realized her question had been a misstep. The richly dressed figure across from her expressed relief that something had been found. A quiet agreement settled between them, the weight of the unspoken hanging in the air. A wistful thought lingered in the air. Life at the orphanage wasn't all bad, thanks to someone special. The elegant blonde, adorned with a delicate floral corsage, regarded someone with a cool, appraising gaze, her half-lidded eyes hinting at a brewing challenge. A thought seemed to strike her, her expression shifting from detached observation to a simmering curiosity as she questioned their words with a skeptical "hm." She trailed off, a hint of disbelief coloring her tone, implying their statement was a surprising contradiction. The crimson-haired man, adorned in a dark, ornate coat, wore a look of profound sadness, a subtle smile barely masking his deep sorrow. Across a grand, ornate table, the lady in emerald green pondered aloud if the crimson-haired man opposite her had truly been unhappy during a certain period of his life. A hint of concern in her thoughtful gaze. Days later, a serene gazebo stood amidst a lush, vibrant garden, hinting at a peaceful interlude in the unfolding drama. Catherine, announced her return to her mother with a bright smile, her posture suggesting a carefree spirit. Her mother, dressed in elegant lavender, warmly welcomed her inside. The crimson-haired man addressed the veiled noblewoman with a polite greeting. Two other women, one with vibrant orange hair and another with silvery locks, observed the interaction from a short distance. The crimson-haired man, adorned in a dark, embellished jacket, inquired with a sly smirk about the identity of an older woman supposedly accompanying his interlocutor. The ginger-haired woman, her face contorted in a furious grimace, vehemently denied the presence of any old hag. With a demure cough and a subtle touch to her chest, the fiery-haired woman introduced herself as the Grand Duchy's personal physician. Intrigued by rumors of a young lady's burgeoning magical abilities, she expressed her desire to observe the practice firsthand. The blonde noblewoman, glasses perched on her nose, sought reassurance from the stoic, dark-clad figure, while two younger women, one in green and the other in lavender, stood expectantly nearby. The noblewoman received a resounding affirmation, seemingly easing her concerns. With a playful glint in her eyes and a touch to her chin, the elegantly dressed blonde granted her dear friend permission to indulge their curiosity. Mischievous smirk played on her lips as she challenged her friend to reveal what they had been hiding. A challenging voice echoed, "Hope you're ready," followed by the sharp clap of hands in a manicured garden, suggesting impending drama. The imposing figure, in black, adorned with gold, announced the start of the lesson with a level test for the young lady in lavender, her words holding a hint of challenge as Catherine in green watched with folded arms, a mixture of apprehension and defiance in her gaze. The silver-haired woman, adorned in a green and white ensemble, offered a sly, knowing smile, her violet eyes hinting at a secret hidden amongst the rich green drapes. The golden-haired girl peeked out the window, her eyes widening at the sight of the red-haired woman, comforting a smaller figure in a blue dress. A young blonde girl, eyes wide with a mix of fear and sadness, sought refuge behind a rich green cloak. The elegant woman in the purple gown, with a touch of impatience, suggested one final attempt, her gaze sweeping over the two younger girls. A command followed, sharp and direct, urging Catherine into preparedness. Catherine, adorned with a green headband and a ruffled white blouse, dismissed someone with a dismissive wave of her hand, her face a mask of cool indifference. A young woman, with flowing golden hair, clad in a pale blue and white maid's uniform, offered a shimmering, crystalline object, her expression a mixture of apprehension and determination, as an outstretched hand, adorned with a frilled white cuff, reached towards her, ready to receive the seemingly magical item. The elegant woman with vibrant orange hair beamed, clasping the hands of Catherine, who declared her satisfaction with a contented sigh. As class time approached, one offered to accompany the other, a gentle touch lingering on her shoulder. The younger woman agreed, a slip of the tongue revealing a deeper connection before correcting herself to the more formal. Doctor, the stern woman, dressed in a green skirt and white blouse, pointed a sharp finger at the blonde girl in blue, demanding, "This'll get it right this time, Miss'll," shrinking under the weight of the woman's gaze, seemed to flinch, The woman's voice, though unheard, echoed in the intensity of her stare. Got it. A loyal attendant affirmed their lady's request, leaving the blonde noblewoman with a determined yet anxious expression, clutching her chest as if steeling herself for a difficult task. Amidst a verdant backdrop, a probing question hung in the air, seeking confirmation of a magical presence within the young lady. With a dismissive scoff and an air of haughty certainty, Catherine confirmed something, turning her back slightly to the crimson-haired figure in a dark, ornate uniform and the blonde girl in a rich red dress who looked on curiously. A quiet really hung in the air, laced with disbelief. As the blonde girl questioned the silver-haired one's seemingly nonchalant assertion, the red-haired woman instructed the blonde, adorned in a rich burgundy and gold dress, to draw mana to her palm, observing the young woman's poise and demeanor. The redhead concluded with a knowing smirk that her element must be ice. Catherine watched with a subtle smirk as the blonde, seemingly lost in a trance, reached out with a shimmering, magical glow emanating from her fingertips. With a quiet confidence, the observer mused that this low-born girl would unknowingly perform magic in her stead. A curt understood confirmed a silent agreement. With a graceful yet determined gesture, Catherine in the green dress extended her hand, a faint glow emanating from her palm as if calling forth some unseen force within the manicured gardens. A delicate, white-gloved hand reached out, an unspoken invitation hanging in the air. Tension crackled in the air as the redhead, her face a mask of disbelief, locked eyes with the silver-haired woman whose sharp retort hung unspoken in the charged silence. As the crimson-haired man paused thoughtfully, a small girl in a green dress watched him with dawning horror, her world tilting on its axis as the implications of the scene unfolded before her. Tension hung thick in the air as someone demanded answers about the results, their voice sharp with anticipation. Ally, caught in the middle, looked thoughtful, a finger pressed to her lip as if weighing her words. A deep voice, seemingly belonging to the imposing figure in black and gold, addressed the redhead with a respectful, yet hesitant, "Madam, news of a certain lady's failure reached the crimson-haired figure, a sly smile playing on their lips." Another voice, laced with disbelief, echoed the news, questioning the unexpected outcome. A plea for another chance echoed, a desperate request for leniency directed at a noble figure. The red-haired woman, seemingly the subject of the plea, stood with a determined expression, her companions murmuring about her earlier nervousness. With renewed conviction, the woman insisted on another attempt, eager to prove herself. With a grim resignation, the red-haired man in ornate attire acknowledged the futility of someone's repeated attempts, the outcome always remaining unchanged. The shocking revelation that the silver-haired woman possessed no mana hung heavy in the air, stunning the gathered nobles, especially the crimson-haired man who reacted with visible disbelief. A richly dressed noble, leaning on an ornate cane, pondered aloud the nature of magic and its inheritance, a furrow in their brow suggesting a troubling thought. The redhead's face contorted in disbelief as the blonde, adorned with a headdress, reacted with wide-eyed shock to a disturbing revelation about Catherine's parentage. The crimson-haired man, adorned in a richly embellished coat, admitted with a hint of intrigue that the situation was unprecedented, even in his experience. The woman in the elegant green dress seethed with anger, muttering about a low-born wench with pure venom, before a grand, misty estate. The silver-haired woman seethed, a sense of betrayal and anger radiating from her. With a sigh of resignation, the speaker delivered an unavoidable truth to Catherine. The regal blonde woman, adorned in a rich gown and crown, delivered a decree that sent a ripple of alarm through Catherine in green, whose startled exclamation echoed through the opulent garden setting. With a strained voice and a backdrop of swirling purple hues, the silver-haired woman declared with unsettling certainty, her gaze fixed on an unseen presence as she uttered Catherine's name. The elegantly dressed woman, her blonde hair pulled back, delivered a pointed remark about accepting one's limitations, her gaze sharp on Catherine before her. A single violet eye, sharp and intense, held a flicker of something unreadable, suspicion, perhaps, or a cold, hard determination. Catherine, her green dress swirling around her, cried out in anguish, consumed by a sudden, overwhelming hatred for everyone present. A startled gasp escaped the lips of a nearby observer, their voice thick with concern for the distressed young lady. The blonde noblewoman, her expression veiled, offered a chillingly calm warning against excessive despair, implying far worse was yet to come. With a swish of her elegant green dress, the lady strode through the opulent room, her thoughts a whirlwind of bitter resentment. The wretch had destroyed everything, lost in thought. The elegantly dressed young man, likely a nobleman judging by his attire, mused about Lord Sawyer, realizing that gaining proximity to him required maintaining a favorable relationship with Diana. Her violet eyes, usually soft, now burned with an unnerving intensity, hinting at a storm brewing within. A venomous vow of "I'll kill her" echoed through the room, followed by the chilling thud of a small figure in a green dress hitting the floor. With a desperate urgency, the silver-haired woman flung her arm out, as if pushing away an invisible force or reaching for something just out of grasp. With a desperate gesture and a hint of defiance in her eyes, the young woman in the green and white dress pointed towards the ornate doorway, a chilling wave of ice creeping across the floor as if mirroring her frigid command, while the edge of a rich green cloak swept dramatically into the foreground, hinting at another's looming presence. Observing the blonde noblewoman's crestfallen expression, a nearby redhead murmured to her companion that the lady seemed deeply disappointed. The dark-haired nobleman, seemingly addressed as "Your Grace," echoed the sentiment, questioning the nature of her disappointment. The elegantly dressed blonde woman, adorned with a jeweled headdress, stood in a formal garden, her expression a mask of quiet disappointment. She mused bitterly that despite all the fuss and complaints, the person she was observing proved to be utterly superficial. The elegantly dressed woman, hand on her chest, expressed a tinge of regret that the girl didn't inherit her features. The other woman, in sharp dark attire, listened intently, her expression unreadable. As the first lamented the lack of resemblance, the dark-haired woman subtly questioned the significance. Given the familial connection, the crimson-haired man mused aloud, a thoughtful finger tapping his chin, that the young woman with the golden braid and spectacles bore a striking resemblance to someone. A hand reached out, seemingly pointing towards someone unseen, as a voice uttered, "That lady over there." The vibrant redhead, her expression shifting from mild curiosity to indignant disbelief, recoiled slightly, demanding, "What did you say?" With a playful giggle, the first woman revealed to Ruri a surprising fact about her age matching that of another woman named Ally. The orange-haired woman seemed taken aback by this revelation, while the woman in the elegant burgundy dress placed a hand to her cheek, seemingly deep in thought. The cloaked figure in black remained stoic and silent, observing the exchange. It was then suggested that Catherine's close bond with Ally might explain their striking similarities. With a subtle tilt of her head and a glint of something unreadable in her eyes, the redhead posed a question to Ally, her voice laced with a mixture of challenge and expectation. With a curt nod, the crimson-haired man assured the fiery-haired woman he'd check on the veiled lady, leaving her seemingly exasperated. With a soft smile and a touch of vulnerability, the regal blonde expressed her gratitude, confessing that the person she addressed was the only one who truly cared for her and Catherine, before making a quiet plea for help in calming Catherine down. With a sly glint in her eye, the crimson-haired girl suggested they begin their lesson. The blonde, eager and bright-eyed, readily agreed. Panic flared in the ornate room as the red-haired woman spun around, her cloak swirling dramatically, to deliver the urgent news that someone had escaped. The silver-haired woman in green stiffened, a look of disbelief and dawning alarm spreading across her face. Her breath hitched, a dawning horror reflected in her wide, frightened eyes as she stammered in disbelief. Realizing the full weight of the situation, stunned, someone gasped, "What?" As icy shards scattered across the polished floor, a creeping frost began to consume the ornate woodwork of a nearby cabinet, prompting a whispered, bewildered, "How?" With a surge of power, the fiery-haired woman shattered the locked door and vanished into the unknown. The ginger-haired woman gasped in shock as the silver-haired one recoiled in disbelief, muttering a stunned denial. The woman with long, golden hair and a troubled expression questioned if she had been deceived, a flicker of suspicion in her red eyes. A sudden, urgent command rang out. She must be found, and without delay. A delicate hand, adorned with a crimson sleeve and ruffled cuff, conjured a shimmering, transparent sphere, holding several glowing orbs within its ethereal embrace against the backdrop of a lush, sun-drenched garden. A young woman with a jeweled headband and a worried expression watched a glowing orb, seemingly lost in thought amidst the garden's beauty. A lone figure in crimson, clutching a glowing orb, yearned for a reunion, unaware of two others approaching from across the lush garden. Frantic cries of "Your Grace" shattered the tranquil scene as the pair in pale dresses rushed towards the seemingly oblivious noblewoman. The maid, her dark hair framing a concerned expression, inquired about the noblewoman's evident distress. The anxious maid cautiously touched the face of her mistress, the elegant blonde lady, whispering her name with concern. With a clandestine air, Ally, her face partially veiled, slipped unnoticed from the estate grounds. The elegantly dressed noblewoman found the maid's confusion about her daughter's whereabouts unsettling, a strange mystery unfolding in the manicured gardens. The maid, Yulia, stood resolute, a silent strength in her stance, Alicia's sole remaining ally in a world turned against them. It was suspected that Yulia's actions were directed by Alicia, a hidden power playing a dangerous game. The dark-haired maid in the crisp, white-trimmed uniform felt a sense of finality. As she realized the long-awaited moment had arrived, her companion mirroring her anticipation with wide, golden eyes, a noble woman in a rich burgundy gown, her golden hair braided and adorned with a crown, mused on how long it had been since she last enjoyed tea with Yulia, a hint of anticipation in her pale eyes. A regal voice granted entry, and the grand doors creaked open, revealing a figure in the doorway, drawing the attention of allies seated within the opulent room. The maid, her expression carefully neutral, inquired if she had been summoned by someone of high rank. The elegant woman, adorned with a monocle, inquired about the reason for their meeting, her expression curious yet guarded. A seemingly casual excuse of simply wanting to chat followed, a thin veil over unspoken intentions. A noble woman, elegantly dressed, settled into a plush armchair as a maid served her chamomile tea, a gentle remedy for her weariness. The maid, with a calm demeanor, sipped her tea in the opulent room. Suddenly, the delicate china shattered against the floor, spilling its contents in a dramatic splash. A maid, her face contorted in distress, clutched her throat, realizing with horror that something was terribly wrong with the tea she'd just consumed. A regal woman, adorned in rich fabrics and jewels, demanded to know the whereabouts of her daughter, her voice echoing with a chilling authority as a servant knelt before her, head bowed in apparent fear or submission. A woman in a dark dress recoiled in disbelief, stammering a confused question as another, seated regally in red, delivered a pointed accusation, her words hanging heavy in the opulent room. The maid, her face contorted in disgust, gagged, realizing spitting wouldn't alleviate the unpleasantness. A gloved hand held a vial filled with a shimmering turquoise liquid, its power ominously described as a truth serum potent enough to force a confession with just a single drop, eliciting a look of worried surprise from the maid in the background. With quiet confidence, a figure revealed a small, shimmering vial explaining its magical, alchemically brewed contents were unique to their skills within the estate. A chilling question hung in the air, demanding satisfaction. The regal woman, adorned in rich fabrics and a crown, leaned down, her finger pointed accusingly at the maid's face, a cruel twist to her lips as she muttered about her daughter. Her tone shifted to a sharp demand, her gaze burning with intensity. As she questioned the maid's knowledge of the girl's whereabouts, the dark-haired person, seemingly in distress, stammered about someone's daughter. A chilling revelation followed. The girl had escaped. Ally, adorned in finery, reacted with stunned disbelief. The head maid sighed, exasperated by the recurring chore of training new staff. She mused that Lady Alicia had also been unusually quiet recently, adding to the unsettling atmosphere. Maid, her face etched with concern, addressed someone named Yulia, then anxiously inquired about a physician. The fiery-haired woman delivered the shocking news. Issel had escaped, leaving the maid in stunned silence. The woman in servant's attire was reminded of a girl, a captive, a memory she clearly shared, with the vibrant redhead who now reacted with a face-bomb, frustration evident in her posture. It was confirmed. The girl they discussed had escaped, resorting to magic in her desperate bid for freedom. The fiery-haired woman, her face a mask of desperation, bit her nail, demanding her return no matter the cost. A somber maid hesitantly accepted a small, dark pouch offered by an unseen person, her eyes filled with a mix of apprehension and resignation. With a curt nod and a promise to begin immediately, the cloaked figure turned and swept out of the room, leaving the two maids to exchange a loaded glance. A maid, bound to Catherine's opulent chambers, harbored a simmering resentment for a girl who had made her life a living hell. The maid, her face etched with a grim understanding, observed the elaborately dressed noblewoman with a mixture of pity and resignation, murmuring about the unbearable burden the other woman could no longer shoulder. The elegant blonde, her face framed by delicate curls and a thin headband, stared down, a mixture of disbelief and burgeoning anger evident in her wide, bright eyes. As she muttered about the absurdity of the situation, a noblewoman dramatically collapsed amidst a flurry of worried maids, her fall echoing in the grand room. A hushed voice, laced with anxiety, broke the silence, desperate to know the appearance of a child seemingly central to this sudden crisis. The dark-haired woman, her face slick with a thin sheen of sweat, thought with a near-maniacal gleam about silver blonde hair. Elsewhere, long, silken, silver-gold strands of hair trailed through the rain. The owner seemingly lost in distressed thought. Under a rain-swept sky, a woman in a flowing gown walked away, her emerald green eyes a stark contrast to the dreary landscape. Ally, watching her, tears streaming down her face, realized with a pang of sadness that those vibrant eyes were just like her own. Accusations hung heavy in the air as the noble woman, clad in a rich burgundy gown, turned away from the maid, her voice dripping with the bitterness of betrayal. A chilling laughter echoed through the opulent room, seemingly detached from the tense confrontation. with a chillingly sweet tone. The dark-haired woman touched her forehead, relishing the unfolding tragedy as if it were the finest entertainment. A tormented laugh, edged with hysteria, ripped through the noble woman as tears streamed down her face. The ornate headpiece a cruel mockery of her inner turmoil. A foot, clad in a dark shoe and white stocking, stepped into a puddle, splashing water. Outwards, the world seemed to tilt, the rain blurring into streaks as a figure in a light blue dress tumbled to the ground. A small gasp escaped her lips as she landed, her golden hair splayed around her. Paralyzed by fear, the young woman in blue crumpled to the ground, unable to escape the looming figure, caught in the downpour. The young woman with flowing golden hair registered a sudden shock, her eyes widening in alarm. Under a stormy sky, a cloaked figure loomed over a distraught young woman with golden hair. The heavy rain mirroring her tears, a burst of joyous laughter, filled the opulent room as the young woman in the elaborate red and gold gown expressed her delight, while the maid, clad in a simple black and white uniform, watched with a hint of amusement. A maid, her face twisted in a disturbingly gleeful expression, declared her admiration for Lady Alicia, citing the noble woman's vicious and wicked nature as the very reason for her devotion. A sharp call of Belinda echoed through the room, causing the blonde-haired woman to turn, a quiet yes escaping her lips as she faced the blue-haired maid. A chilling command to kill her hung in the opulent room, directed at the woman in purple, while another, dressed in ghostly white, looked on. The blue-haired maid, startled, questioned what she had just heard, her plea hanging heavy in the air. Tears streamed down the noble woman's face as she pleaded for someone, unseen, to remove a despised presence from her view. Rain lashed against the ornate facade of a grand palace, a backdrop to some unseen drama. A mop, stained crimson, lay discarded on the polished floor, a chilling testament to violence recently enacted. The noble woman in crimson stood rigidly by the window, her back to the two maids frantically cleaning a disturbingly blood-soaked carpet. The noble woman, her back to the viewer, stood gazing out at the rain-lashed windows, lost in thought. Two maids, one blonde and one dark-haired, exchanged a worried, silent glance as they observed their mistress's melancholic posture. A lone figure in a regal red and gold gown stood solemnly in a dimly lit, ornate room, her posture suggesting a heavy heart with a delicate tremor in her voice. The blonde noblewoman in an elaborate headdress confessed a secret, a revelation shimmering in the air like a fragile bubble dot as rain lashed against the windowpane. The noblewoman in crimson, a troubled figure against the stormy backdrop, confessed a chilling truth. She had taken a life. Rain lashed against delicate, white roses, a stark contrast to the chilling scene below. A crumpled figure lay amidst a spreading pool of crimson, the stark white tiles reflecting the grim reality. A wave of grief washed over the blonde man, his bright eyes welling with unshed tears. The blonde noblewoman, her face pale, gripped the window frame, rain streaking the glass as she fought back a wave of vulnerability. Determined to stay strong within the imposing mansion walls, the blonde noblewoman, tears welling in her eyes, declared with chilling conviction that the cleansing was far from over. Milan, a woman of obvious status in a richly embroidered gown, directed her maids to summon Catherine to the reception room, a hint of command in her gesture. The maid, startled by the urgency in the unseen speaker's voice, received a crucial instruction to ensure another woman awaited their arrival. As something of grave importance was about to unfold, the young girl with golden hair braced herself against the onslaught of shimmering turquoise blades, her blue eyes blazing with a mixture of fear and defiance. A cloaked figure, partially obscured by the shadows of their hood, deflected a glowing, arcane attack with a shimmering, circular shield, the force of the impact sending ripples of energy through the rain-soaked forest. A heavy boot landed firmly on the ground. The cloaked figure landed with a chilling, icy crash, their presence radiating menace towards a smaller, vulnerable figure cowering in the rain. A cloaked figure stood silently in the pouring rain, their face hidden by the deep shadows of their hood. Startled, a young woman with long, light hair noticed the figure, a flicker of icy magic dancing in her hand as she wondered aloud about the newcomer's identity and purpose. Suspicious, she questioned if the mysterious arrival had been sent from the mansion, her expression a mix of apprehension and guarded curiosity. Her bright eye wide with a mixture of fear and realization, worried she had pushed her abilities too far. Darkness closed in around her as a chilling premonition gripped her. Something was terribly wrong. Under a torrential downpour, a figure in dark clothing looked down with alarm at the prone form of a young woman in a pale dress. Icy shards scattered around her, rain lashed against the grand, imposing manner, a stark contrast to the warmth within. Inside, a woman in a dark dress tenderly tucked blankets around a sleeping children, her expression a mix of concern and affection. A hand clenched, tension radiating from the gesture. A darkened figure loomed, their presence demanding an explanation from the nervous woman. Her eyes wide, she hesitantly questioned the figure's unexpected arrival. Asterisk, a cloaked figure emerged from the rain, carrying a young woman in his arms. His words a chilling declaration of his purpose. The woman he held appeared distressed, her face pale against her golden hair. Another, with short brown hair, looked on in stunned silence. The exclamation point a stark representation of their shock. The woman, her face etched with worry, brought a trembling hand to her mouth, whispering anxiously about someone in dire straits. A commanding figure, clad in dark attire, gestured for the other, dressed in lighter hues, to follow. A noblewoman, in a rich burgundy gown, stood within the opulent expanse of Catherine's room, a thought weighing heavily on her. Her daughter had served there as a maid. A flicker of arcane energy emanating from a bookshelf caught the noblewoman's eye, a spark of wonder and perhaps suspicion igniting within her. A noblewoman in a flowing red gown paused at the threshold of a dusty, neglected room, her gaze falling upon a forgotten piano, a silent testament to a bygone era. A dimly lit, dusty room held a heavy table, scarred by time and neglect. A single flickering candle casting long, dancing shadows. The elegant woman, adorned in rich fabrics and jewels, scoffed. A chilling realization dawning upon her that a secret room had been constructed, and a child hidden within. Without her knowledge, a wave of silence hung heavy in the air, broken only by the unsettling sight of mold creeping across a forgotten loaf of bread. Bare feet on an ornate rug, a loaf of bread resting nearby, sparked a sudden, hopeful thought. A gasp escaped her lips, a choke sound lost in the opulent, yet somber room as she crumpled to the floor, surrounded by scattered papers. Overwhelmed with grief and empathy, the crowned woman wept, clutching a seemingly insignificant, wrapped object close to her chest, the shattered backdrop mirroring her emotional state. She lamented the unimaginable hardship and pain another must have endured. Despite the cruel treatment she received, the thought of the other person's kindness in bringing her bread brought a fresh wave of tears, and a heart-wrenching whisper of "my baby." Clutching a small, precious object, the noblewoman in crimson and gold sank to the floor, a discarded box lying nearby. A single tear traced a path down her cheek, her blue eyes shimmering with a potent mix of grief and shock. The silver-haired woman in the elegant green dress sat pensively on a luxurious chaise lounge, a subtle frown creasing her brow as she stared at something in her hand. A regal woman, resplendent in red and gold, gazed down in surprise at a figure slumped on a chaise lounge, a softer here, escaping her lips. The elegantly dressed blonde woman apologized for keeping Catherine waiting, her tone suggesting a formality that belied a deeper tension. Catherine, regal in her finery and seated upon an ornate throne, calmly informed someone that she was considering assigning them a new magic tutor. A shocked gasp, or perhaps an exclamation of disbelief, followed her announcement. Catherine, adorned with a simple headband, looked perplexed as she heard the unsettling observation about her lack of magic, a trait seemingly incongruous with her lineage. Convinced there was an error, she silently concluded that Ruri, the apparent source of the information, must have been wrong. A young woman with golden hair, dressed in elaborate finery, declared her fervent wish to marry a certain Lord Sawyer with utmost haste. Catherine, affecting a delicate pose, dramatically sighed and explained that her etiquette lessons for her grand debut as a noblewoman left no room for magic practice. Catherine's face, framed by golden hair, held a knowing smirk. Observing a mother and daughter in a grand room, Catherine commented on the mother's late pursuit of magic, which the woman deeply regretted. Catherine's gaze shifted to the daughter, expressing a heartfelt wish to spare her from the same fate. With a chillingly calm expression, ally in the ornate dress declared her desire for revenge, vowing to inflict double the pain her daughter had endured. With a quiet, "all right," resignation tinged her voice, her crimson eyes hinting at a storm brewing beneath the surface. Dismissing the other with a curt "go-ahead," the figure amidst the elegant bookcases granted permission to leave. The silver-haired woman, a flicker of something unreadable in her crimson eyes, turned away. Her footsteps echoed softly as she walked down the hall, leaving the blonde-haired woman watching her with a look of quiet intensity. With a final, poignant "take care, mother," the young woman in the emerald green dress turned and walked away, leaving a shadowy figure lingering in the doorway of the grand hall. The blonde noblewoman, adorned in a rich gown, stared pensively at the fabric in her hands, a silent tension filling the opulent room. A woman in elegant attire, adorned with floral embroidery, held a worn notebook, her expression a mix of curiosity and apprehension, wondering if it belonged to her. Delicate hands, adorned with a glimpse of red sleeve, clutched an aged document, its script seemingly revealing a shocking Secret. Ally, her face framed by a jeweled headband and spectacles, absorbed the revelation, her expression hardening with disbelief as she muttered, "No way." A chilling thought crossed someone's mind. Could the young woman already know the truth? The possibility loomed large and ominous, that the elegant Grand Duchess of this very house was her true mother. Diana tenderly embraced a silver-haired child, oblivious to the agonizing truth that she cherished an impostor while her true daughter remained unknown. The thought haunted her. What if her real daughter, somewhere out there, felt only disappointment for such a blind and foolish mother? A young girl in a flowing blue dress seemed to drift away, lost amidst a flurry of shimmering particles, prompting a worried thought about her flight. A heavy, remorseful apology echoed, filled with unspoken pain and regret for the child's departure. A regal figure, draped in rich fabrics and gold, hunched over, seemingly burdened by a weighty promise hanging in the air. "Until your mother finds you." A fragile-looking blonde woman lay in bed, hands clasped together, as if needing just a little more rest. Flushed and vulnerable, Ally lay in bed, a silent plea for patience etched on her face. As she whispered, "Please wait just a little longer." A flicker of unease crossed the ginger-haired woman's face, her expression shifting to one of quiet suspicion as she murmured to herself. Finding something amiss with a cascade of fiery red hair, she paused at the doorway, her hand resting on the frame as she gazed into the dimly lit room. The maids exchanged hushed whispers as the fiery-haired woman addressed them, a subtle gesture suggesting a request or instruction. Panic flared as the redhead in the lavender gown was discovered missing from her room. The redhead, her face etched with worry, pondered the unsettling silence surrounding a missing person, fearing something dreadful had befallen them during their search for a child. As another woman, accompanied by a maid, approached, the anxious woman breathed the name Alicia, her voice heavy with apprehension. The fiery-haired woman, her face a mask of conflicted emotions, seemed to brace herself for something unpleasant. A hushed announcement pierced the air, heralding the arrival of the Grand Duchess. The elegant blonde woman, dressed in a fine gown, held her cane lightly, a small smile playing on her lips as her maid trailed behind her, a look of quiet concern shadowing her features. Noticing her friend's pale complexion, the elegant lady in blue inquired with concern if something was amiss, mentioning that someone named Shane had also noticed her unwell appearance. Brushing off the concern with a slight start, the other woman quickly diverted the conversation by asking where her friend was going. The fiery-haired woman, anticipating her magic lesson, beamed as shimmering, crystalline magic bloomed from a hand outstretched towards her. A quiet chuckle and a knowing icy escaped her lips, hinting at a playful anticipation of the coming lesson. A surge of vibrant blue energy crackled around the flowing fabric of a long dress, hinting at a sudden release of power. A sudden, shocking event unfolded, leaving the red-haired woman reeling in disbelief as she whirled around, the blonde noblewoman and her maid frozen in stunned silence. A stray spell scorched the elegant lady's dress, drawing a sharp, surprised "what?" from the maid attending her. The elegant woman in the ruffled blue gown recoiled in horror, vibrant orange hair cascading around her as icy crystals materialized, her whispered disbelief hanging in the air. With a touch of self-deprecating humor, the blonde noblewoman, her eyes glistening with unshed tears, nervously clutched her ornate cane and worried about her companion, Ally. With a strained laugh and trembling lips, the redhead insisted she was fine, though her every fiber betrayed a hidden turmoil. Announcing her intention to depart, the young woman with a cane turned to leave, a polite farewell offered to the elegant lady in a flowing gown who urged her to enjoy her lesson. A servant stood respectfully nearby as the lady apologized and expressed concern for her departing guest. The fiery-haired woman glared with suspicion as the elegant blonde turned away, a tense silence hanging thick in the air. The elegant blonde woman's gaze drifted towards a specific direction, a flicker of recognition, perhaps apprehension, in her pale eyes. The elegant lady, gripping a long cane, directed Shane to dispatch another maid with tea for Calypso. The maid, dipped in a respectful curtsy, confirmed her understanding. Sunlight streamed through the grand arched doorway of a palatial estate, hinting at the opulence within. The silver-haired man, a subtle smile playing on his lips, was addressed. With an insistent Calypso, he watched, stunned, as she ripped a piece of fabric from her skirt with sudden, fierce determination. Exasperated, the woman with fiery hair questioned the silver-haired man about a recurring problem. Gesturing towards some papers on the ornate desk between them, he, holding the papers out to her, simply asked what the matter was. The maid watched, seemingly hesitant, as the elegant blonde woman stood amidst the opulence of a grand dining room. The blonde, possibly a noblewoman judging by her attire, turned to the maid, leaving a task in her capable hands. With a respectful dip of her head, the maid accepted the responsibility. A maid, her back turned, paused at a doorway, seemingly hesitant to fully enter as a blonde woman with long, flowing curls watched her expectantly. A maid carefully placed a teacup on a table while another woman, possibly her mistress, relaxed nearby. With a soft creak, the same maid cautiously opened a grand door, her expression hinting at a secret. A sharp tap of a shoe against the polished floor echoed through the opulent room. Ally, elegant in her dark gown, leaned against the imposing doorway, a cane resting nearby, her posture radiating an air of quiet expectation. Just as the fiery-haired woman began to speak, a sudden interruption hung in the air. The fiery-haired woman demanded to know when she would finally be made his legal wife, her eyes blazing with a mixture of anger and impatience. The silver-haired man, face tight with conflicted emotions, muttered to himself about Diana's continued existence, a shattered backdrop hinting at his inner turmoil. The fiery-haired woman slammed her hands on the ornate table, her voice laced with disbelief and outrage at the prospect of a life wasted in waiting. A troubled young nobleman stood in a grand, yet empty room, the flickering fireplace casting long, dancing shadows that mirrored the turmoil within him. With an air of quiet urgency, someone advised Ally to patiently await the Marquis's actions. Troubled, the elegant blonde in a sophisticated dark gown wondered what mysterious matter lay in the Marquis's hands. He leaned towards the fiery-haired woman, his words a stark confession of a marriage built on financial need, a truth he flung at her with an air of bitter defiance. Despite some lingering doubts, the fiery-haired woman recounted the Marquis's promise of a diamond mine as a reward once Catherine makes her societal debut. With a soft sigh, the vibrant redhead weakly agreed, leaning into the comforting touch of the silver-haired man beside her. A lone figure, clad in a dark dress, stood at the threshold of a grand, partially open door, a soft, mirthless chuckle escaping her lips as a shaft of light illuminated her from within. A young blonde woman with striking blue eyes, adorned in a delicate white gown and a jeweled necklace, reflected somberly on a significant past event, Catherine's debut. A chilling realization washed over her as diamonds and cash rained down, a metaphorical storm representing her father's vast fortune, the very reason for her continued existence, a life preserved solely for monetary gain. Tragically, a mother and daughter, clinging to each other in a dimly lit room, lay dying, unbeknownst to their grandfather and father, respectively, amidst the grandeur of a debutante ball. A nobleman in emerald finery, flanked by other elegantly dressed figures, eyed the young woman beside him with a calculating glint, suspecting treachery connected to a recently relinquished mine. Her eyes, sharp and filled with disgust, narrowed as a venomous thought, branding someone as utterly repulsive, pierced the tense silence. With a determined stride, the woman in the dark dress clicked her heels against the stone path, leaving behind a swirl of dust. Her golden hair trailed behind her as she turned sharply, a sense of urgency in her movements. Leaning against a tree in a manicured garden, Ally realized the deceit ran deeper than she'd imagined. A chilling realization dawned on her: the love, the friendships, everything within the mansion walls was a carefully constructed facade. Ally, her face partially obscured by shimmering strands of hair, let out a shaky, distressed breath. A blonde woman, partially obscured by dappled sunlight, fiddled with a small, ornate compact. A faint click echoing in the tranquil setting, a serene, sun-drenched garden hinted at a peaceful moment, but confusion clouded the crimson-haired figure's face. A soft huh, escaping their lips. Bathed in the morning sun, the crimson-haired figure paused, a sense of anticipation mixed with worry crossing their mind as they realized class had started. But someone was noticeably absent. The crimson-haired woman, dressed in a dark, imposing outfit, turned with a knowing smirk at the sound of her name, Ruri, called out by a mysterious blonde. A blonde woman, elegantly dressed, apologized nervously for a delay, a hint of strain in her smile as she addressed someone as sister. The red-haired woman, clad in a dark, ornate outfit, responded with a silent question, her expression unreadable, her gaze sharp. The blonde, concerned, inquired if something was troubling the crimson-haired individual. He readily agreed, oblivious to her inner monologue as she lamented the unexpected interruption to her solitude. He abruptly grasped her hand, his touch sending a jolt through her as the world seemed to tilt. The crimson-haired man, imposing in his ornate uniform, demanded, "Ally, look at him," accusing her of a lie. She, head bowed and seemingly vulnerable, murmured that looking wouldn't change anything, hinting at a concealed blindness. The crimson-haired man's gaze held a chilling weight, his words a quiet threat. "You can see everything." Ally, adorned in a delicate white gown and spectacles, registered something with a quiet gasp of surprise. Sunlight glinted off the grand palace's ornate domes and spires. A door within the palace burst open with a resounding crash. Ally clung to the crimson-haired man's coat, her voice barely a whisper as she questioned how he had uncovered the truth. The crimson-haired woman, adorned in a sharp, military-esque uniform, offered a sly, knowing smile as she acknowledged her sister's power, only to pierce the air with the demanding, "Answer me." Ally, adorned in a fine gown, looked up in stunned bewilderment, a silent question hanging in the air as she suddenly realized her secret was exposed. Her voice, tinged with suspicion and wonder, finally broke the silence, demanding to know how her regained sight had been discovered. In a lavishly decorated room, a tense silence hung in the air between the red-haired figure and the blonde, broken only by an unspoken accusation hanging heavy between them. A challenging question echoed, demanding to know why the pretense had been maintained if the truth was already known. The crimson-haired figure, adorned in a military-style jacket, began to speak, a thoughtful expression shadowing their features. Ally, adorned in a delicate lace-trimmed outfit, was taken aback, her wide eyes questioning the unexpected compliment just uttered. The crimson-haired noble, with a sly smirk, was captivated by the blonde's bold demeanor, finding every aspect of it utterly enchanting. Ally, her voice laced with disbelief, questioned if her affection had blinded the crimson-haired figure to her deception. A low growl rumbled as a chilling warning followed. "Don't mess with me." In a lavishly decorated room, a blonde woman faced a striking figure with crimson hair, clad in a dark, flowing coat, who casually revealed their employer's name, Marquis Peresht, with a hint of challenge in the air. Then, turning slightly, the red-haired individual questioned whether such a powerful connection wasn't incentive enough for cooperation. Bathed in golden light, the Saintess of Peresht appeared, a hand reaching out towards her, a silent invitation, with a knowing smile, and an outstretched hand. The crimson-haired nobleman implied that the honor bestowed wasn't lightly given, but earned through trust. He confessed his simple faith in the unseen recipient of his words. A tense silence hung in the opulent room as the crimson-haired man approached the elegant blonde woman, his presence radiating a palpable aura of authority. A flicker of hope ignited in her golden eyes as she considered a certain man, a glimmer of possibility in her troubled thoughts. Hope flickering. Someone murmured that their request might be heard, while another, adorned in ornate robes, was urgently addressed as Ruri, and a hand reached out, tugging at their sleeve. With a hesitant touch on his elaborately decorated sleeve, the blonde-haired woman looked up at the imposing, crimson-haired man, a plea in her eyes as she softly asked for his assistance. A sealed black envelope, adorned with a delicate white flower, lay upon a pristine table. Amidst the remnants of a luxurious afternoon tea, a blonde woman, perched elegantly on a plush sofa, was met with a gentle inquiry from the silver-haired man seated opposite. A silver-haired gentleman received an unexpected invitation, a flicker of intrigue in his lavender eyes. The blonde lady, adorned with a jeweled necklace, pondered an invitation with a surprised expression. In the opulent gardens of the Iberg estate, 3 elegantly dressed women partook in a sophisticated tea party, their delicate china clinking amidst hushed whispers and the fragrant bloom of summer flowers. A special occasion was being celebrated, adding an air of anticipation to the already refined atmosphere. As invitations fluttered down like confetti, a dark-haired woman in a cream and blue gown, Calypso, observed the familiar annual arrival with a knowing look. With a pensive gaze, the blonde noblewoman sipped her tea, her mind occupied by the crucial need to make her marriage to Catherine succeed, a commitment that demanded accepting the Duke's invitation. A concerned voice wondered aloud if the task ahead would prove too challenging. The elegantly dressed figure, seen in profile, confessed their worry for their companion. Their tone laced with tenderness, the opulent room held a man, seemingly lost in thought, a memory of feigned concern masking a different truth. He had sent Alicia in his place, sipping her tea. The blonde noblewoman considered the news that someone was maneuvering her into the company of other high-ranking ladies. He cautioned her against going, fearing she might be hurt or her kind heart wounded by the whispers of noble women. She considered his words, a flicker of concern in her eyes, before glancing away. A quiet conflict brewed within her, knowing Catherine's potential disappointment if she didn't go, especially given Catherine's affection for Lord Sawyer. The suggestion of sending Alicia hung in the air, met with a thoughtful pause before quiet acceptance cemented the decision. With a note of underlying trust, a few days later, the Grand Palace stood serene beneath a clear sky, its ornate fountain playing amidst meticulously manicured gardens. A stately carriage adorned with intricate details waited patiently before a grand palace. A team of pristine white horses, harnessed and ready, stood poised to draw another carriage, hinting at an impending departure or arrival. The redhead, adorned in a flowing sage-green gown, descended the grand staircase, a subtle smile playing on her lips. Basking in the glow of Diana's kindness, the redhead, adorned in a beautiful gown meant for another, closed her eyes with a smug smile, already envisioning herself as the Duchess, A small girl, dressed in a delicate cream-colored dress, stood hesitantly between a woman in a vibrant green gown and a stern-looking man in a dark suit, the opulent backdrop of a palatial garden hinting at a tense encounter. A woman in a flowing green gown urgently called for a doctor, her voice laced with worry as she turned towards another woman in a pale yellow dress. A cunning smile played on Catherine's lips as she approached, thrilled at the prospect of finally meeting the young lord. The elegant lady, radiant in a sea green gown, practically vibrated with excitement as her companion, hair the color of polished silver, remarked on her obvious joy. At a tea party at the House Iberg, a reunion tinged with an air of formality and the weight of unspoken words unfolded. As someone remarked on the passage of time, a respectful address of Madam confirmed the presence of a woman of status, her elegant attire only hinting at the stories behind her poised demeanor. The elegant blonde, her pale blue gown shimmering, descended the grand staircase, a maid hovering close, offering a supporting hand. The silver-haired woman, a mischievous glint in her eye, accepted the other's polite regret with a breezy, almost defiant, "It can't be helped," with a glance at his reddened eyes. The silver-haired gentleman lamented his unsuitability for a tea party. The silver-haired man, dressed in formal attire, mused that it would be impossible, unless a miracle were to occur, a subtle smirk playing on his lips. The fiery-haired woman offered a subtle, knowing smile, her eyes half closed as if guarding a secret. The silver-haired woman returned a small, almost imperceptible smile of her own, a hint of challenge in her violet eyes. The red-haired woman, her elegant gown swaying, turned with a startled expression, a silent question hanging in the air. Elsewhere, a blonde woman in a shimmering dress stood beside Calypso, a tense silence between them, as if waiting for a storm to break. White fabric billowed and boots pounded the pavement as someone hurried away, leaving only a blur of motion and a sense of urgency. Amidst the grandeur of a palace ballroom, a hush fell over the gathered nobles as someone addressed a woman in a pale blue gown with a respectful "Your Grace." The blonde, bandaged woman's eyes widened with a mixture of surprise and dawning realization. Someone frantically warned the high priest against entering a particular place. Just as the Duchess arrived, her presence announced with respect, a robed figure strode towards the blonde lady and her dark-haired companion, dramatically proclaiming they had found something lost and ethereal. Confusion rippled through Eli's features as she grappled with the other's cryptic words. A revelation hung heavy in the air. A noble woman, arms crossed and radiating indignation, stood accused of a grave deception regarding a holy power and its cost. Her accuser, a figure clad in light colors and partially obscured, seethed with betrayed trust, the words fraud echoing the magnitude of the perceived betrayal. Clutching a small object, the priest insisted his intentions were purely to heal her Grace's sight, not to exploit his religious position. Tension crackled in the air as the maid, dressed in stark blue and white, vehemently insisted to the person behind her, perhaps a nobleman given his attire, that a certain object held a sacred significance, related to a priest emblem, while to richly dressed noble women watched the unfolding drama. The elegant woman's face, framed by fiery red hair and adorned with shimmering jewels, contorted with a barely contained fury. Confused, Ally touched her face, a bandage visible near her eye, her mind reeling from the improbable idea that her vision had somehow been transferred to her daughter. Awestruck, the elderly man in white robes whispered about a miracle. Sensing a lingering energy in the air during meditation, the cloaked figure gathered it into a glowing orb, presenting it to the blonde noblewoman. A glowing crystal materialized between outstretched hands, Ally in an elegant gown assuring someone that touching it would restore their sight, causing the redhead beside her to gasp in disbelief. The young woman with silver hair and a yellow dress, eyes wide with disbelief, gasped in denial at a shocking revelation concerning her mother, with a stammering "Why, yes." The redhead in the elegant green gown whirled around, her voice laced with a desperate urgency as she expressed her fears about the unknown and the terrifying possibility of black magic. Ally, her pale face framed by golden hair, hinted at a hidden depth of despair as she challenged someone, her words tinged with bitterness about a world shrouded in darkness they couldn't comprehend. Clutching her chest, the redhead in a flowing green gown confessed her desperate need to cling to any shred of hope, no matter how improbable her anxiety. Palpable. With a knowing smirk, Ally reassured someone unseen, her gaze fixed on something beyond the frame, sensing a palpable power. She confirmed her suspicion, recognizing the distinct presence of holy energy emanating from a crystal she held. The elegant noblewoman, leaning on a cane, sought assistance from her blue-haired maid, Belinda, who readily agreed with a respectful curtsy as another servant looked on. A shimmering orb, cradled in outstretched hands, pulsed with light as a slender finger delicately tapped its surface. The air thick with anticipation, shielding her eyes from a sudden, intense light. the elegant redhead gasped, while a young girl beside her watched with wide-eyed concern, and Calypso nearby reacted with similar surprise. His hand raised to block the glare. A surge of vibrant turquoise energy flowed from Ally in the elegant, light-colored gown, her expression serene yet powerful. As the magic crackled around her outstretched hands, Ally, adorned in a shimmering gown and delicate necklace, closed her eyes, a veil of sadness shadowing her beautiful features. A shimmering, ethereal light descended upon the courtyard fountain as a small group gathered, their elegant attire a stark contrast to the child in more modest clothes, a silent tension hanging in the air. A concerned voice broke through the golden-haired woman's reverie. As she stood before a horse-drawn carriage with a slow, deliberate gesture, Ally touched her head, a dawning realization flickering in her eyes as she murmured, "I can see." A radiant blonde, adorned in a flowing white gown, gazed out with a newfound clarity, a knowing smile playing on her lips as she murmured about her enhanced vision. Two elegantly dressed women, one in green, the other in yellow, seemed to stride forward, their expressions a mixture of surprise and apprehension. As a man in formal attire watched them intently, a maid, her hands clasped together at her chin, looked on with wonder as an older gentleman with a long beard and a younger man in a suit shared her stunned reaction. The scene radiated an aura of awe and disbelief, culminating in the whispered exclamation, "It's a miracle." The maids rejoiced as the Grand Duchess finally awoke, the relief palpable. A radiant, golden-haired woman, seemingly moved by the news, paused mid-stride, a soft gasp escaping her lips. Overwhelmed with joy, a maid offered heartfelt congratulations. The fiery-haired woman, adorned in a shimmering gown, looked at the silver-haired man in elegant attire with an expression of disbelief and a hint of annoyance. Amidst a backdrop of elegant festivities, a woman in a flowing green gown received polite congratulations, while a silver-haired gentleman stood nearby, a hint of veiled emotion in his expression. A sudden, excited cry of "Ally, darling," pierced the air, revealing a small girl with golden curls rushing towards the woman. Someone sharply called out Catherine's name, her face contorting with a mixture of shock and anger. With a loving embrace and words of endearment, the golden-haired woman held the smaller, silver-haired girl close, overwhelmed with emotion. Ally's eyes shone with a mixture of disbelief and longing, as she gazed upon a familiar face. A young woman, in an elaborate gown, curtsied deeply before an older woman and a formally dressed man. As onlookers whispered amongst themselves, touched by the scene, a cloaked figure, ribbons trailing, strode purposefully away from a grand mansion, leaving a group of formally dressed onlookers staring after them with a mixture of shock and confusion. Amidst a swirl of vibrant colors and shimmering light, the crimson-haired figure, with a knowing smirk, mused about the intriguing concept of a fabricated miracle. He found the notion captivating, a spark of amusement in his eyes. Sunlight streamed into a grand, opulent room, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. The crimson-haired man, stark against the opulent backdrop, confessed his deceptive blindness. To the golden-haired woman, a revelation hanging heavy in the air. A cunning glint flickered in the silver-haired man's eyes, as he declared he'd unraveled his adversary's scheme, while the red-haired woman beside him looked contemplative. His thoughts then turned to his missing daughter, the final piece of the puzzle. But the search felt daunting and limited. Amidst a delicate backdrop of blossoms, a desperate plan formed. A miracle had to be faked, one so convincing it would deceive even the palace's most esteemed physicians. A flawless illusion of the impossible. Ally, adorned with a delicate necklace, breathed the name. A whisper of both affection and concern. Ruri. With newfound resolve, Ally declared her intention to finally open her eyes and, with a conspiratorial air, proposed a plan to deceive everyone, her hand resting dramatically on her chest. As she sought the red-haired figure's assistance, the redhead turned, a flicker of something unreadable in his sharp blue eye. The crimson-haired man, adorned in a dark, regal outfit with gold accents, lamented his soft heart. Unable to resist a certain pair of pleading eyes, the crimson-haired man offered his unwavering support, a subtle smile playing on his lips as he urged the lady to simply ask. The blonde noblewoman, adorned in a delicate necklace, beamed with genuine gratitude towards Ruri. Against the backdrop of a majestic, sun-drenched palace, a plan began to form, its details yet unspoken. A pregnant pause hung in the air, heavy with anticipation. A silent understanding passed between two unseen individuals, the weight of the unspoken words intensifying the mystery. Ally in the elegant gown recoiled in shock, her hands raised defensively, as though warding off an unseen blow. Before a grand mansion, Catherine, clutching a small, glowing object, questioned the unseen presence, her voice tinged with apprehension about the potential flaws in the vision granted to her. The other girl, dressed in lavender, worried aloud about unforeseen consequences, her words hanging heavy with foreboding. With a knowing look, Ally acknowledged the other's unspoken fear, offering a reassuring smile and a gentle "don't worry." The lavender-haired woman, face pale and tear-streaked, turned away, the conviction growing that her blindness was no accident. Ally in the elegant gown, a picture of grace and regality, gestured dramatically as she spoke of the unfolding miracle, her words carrying a weight that held the smaller, yellow-gowned girl's attention. The fiery-haired woman gasped, a hand flying to her mouth in stunned silence. Below, the silver-haired man watched her reaction with a sharp, almost predatory gaze. The elegant blonde woman, her face etched with concern, knelt beside the small, gray-haired girl in a frilly yellow dress, her voice laced with worry as she inquired about her well-being. Catherine, adorned in a delicate yellow dress, feigned a sniffle, complaining of a sudden cold, which was met with a surprised, yet doubtful "Oh my, really?" from an unseen observer, a woman in a white gown, presumably. Ally was asked to stay and care for a sweating Catherine. Ally protested weakly, having already made other arrangements, while the other woman, likely Catherine's mother, judging by the elegant attire and concerned gaze, pointed out the child's visible discomfort, making it clear they couldn't leave her in that state. Catherine, startled, looked up at Ally, who gently touched her shoulder, suggesting they both take a break. The blonde noblewoman looked troubled, clearly disagreeing with the idea of being a stand-in for the Grand Duchess. With a steely glint in her newly healed eyes, the fiery-haired woman declared her intention to attend the tea party, a subtle smirk playing on her lips. Under a brilliant sky, a request for assistance with attire was met with immediate and respectful affirmation. The elegant ladies in pastel gowns strolled through the sunlit gardens, their maid trailing respectfully behind, while a sharply dressed gentleman watched their approach with an unreadable expression. The silver-haired man clicked his tongue in annoyance, his gaze sharp on the distressed redhead beside him. Frustration simmered beneath his composed facade as he realized his meticulously crafted plan was unraveling. The woman in the elegant gown beside him, seemingly oblivious to the intricate dance he'd orchestrated, a woman in a cream dress, knelt, her voice laced with concern as she addressed the elegant figure in seafoam green, who seemed momentarily frozen, her gaze fixed on a departing man in black. A horse-drawn carriage, elegant and stately, arrived at a grand mansion, hinting at the importance of its passenger. The elegant lady in a peach gown, surrounded by blooming roses, appeared serene, almost regal. A closer look revealed a determined glint in her turquoise eyes as a small smile played on her lips, and she decided it was time to go. A young girl, her dress a froth of cream and yellow, rushed towards a woman in elegant blue, crying out "Mother!" Catherine, clutching her chest with a desperate plea, begged her mother to take her along, her voice laced with urgency, but then quickly insisted she was perfectly fine. Despite the obvious distress in her eyes, a woman with an elaborate updo, adorned with a sparkling necklace, clung to a desperate hope, her expression a mix of fierce determination and hidden vulnerability, as she prioritized one relationship above all others. With a desperate plea in her eyes, the girl in the simpler gown offered to become the other's daughter, begging to be taken away. A hand reached out, fingers slightly curled, as if towards something precious yet intangible, against the backdrop of a shimmering fountain. The elegant blonde woman, adorned in a beautiful gown, gently caressed Catherine's face, her expression warm and inviting as she expressed her delight in sharing the special occasion with her. With a soft blush and a bright smile, the young woman with silver hair and yellow ribbons eagerly agreed to her mother's request. A gentle squeeze of hands confirmed a silent agreement between Catherine and her companion, a subtle good hanging in the air, a chilling promise hung in the air, directed at the two elegantly dressed young women by a shadowy figure, perched upon a horse-drawn carriage. The fiery-haired woman, back turned to the unfolding scene, seemed to absorb the ominous words, a palpable tension emanating from her poised frame. A woman with fiery red hair, adorned in elegant jewelry, cried out Catherine, her face contorted with a mixture of shock and anger. A carriage pulled up to the grand estate, its arrival observed by a woman in a flowing green gown, her vibrant red hair a stark contrast against the backdrop of the opulent mansion. A carriage wheel rumbled over the cobblestones. A sharply dressed figure, perched on the edge of an ornate carriage seat, held the reins taut, his posture suggesting an impatient wait. A lone carriage, drawn by a team of white horses, journeyed down a sun-dappled path through a vibrant green forest, white birds soaring overhead as if escorting it on its unknown mission. Basking in the sunlight streaming through a grand window, Ally touched her face, a wistful smile playing on her lips as she relished the freedom of seeing the world. Unveiled, a serene landscape of sparkling water and verdant hills stretched before them, marking the start of a 3-day journey from the Grand Duchy to the capital. A shimmering portal within a grand, arched structure promised a swift, magical journey. The elegant blonde, adorned with jewels, expressed her relief to her mother that everything had worked out perfectly, a subtle smile playing on her lips. But her mother's intrigued HM hinted at something left unsaid. The blonde noblewoman, arms crossed and posture stiff, expressed her relief at the other woman's recovery, confessing her worry that she'd been the cause of the illness. The silver-haired woman, clutching her chest with a gasp, admitted to a deep sense of guilt. A hopeful question about continued story times hung in the air, met with a startled pardon, and a touch to Catherine's delicate chin. Her wide-eyed surprise quickly softened as she confessed a heartfelt desire to ease the other's hidden pain. Lost in the melody of a voice as bright as a canary's song, the elegant blonde woman, adorned with delicate jewelry, closed her eyes, a dreamlike joy washing over her. Catherine, her eyes wide with what might have been feigned enthusiasm, eagerly accepted her mother's offer, eliciting a warm smile from the elegant blonde woman. A sleek black cat stalked a tiny mouse near the ornate wheels of a grand carriage, oblivious to the bustling crowd around it. The boys, one in brown and one in white, raced through a bustling town square, their eyes fixed on a departing carriage, urging each other to hurry. A young woman with blonde hair watched, seemingly surprised. As to figures, a man and a woman with darker hair hurried away down a cobblestone street. The boy in the newsboy cap, a mischievous glint in his eyes, announced with a flourish that today's snack was apple pie, eliciting an excited really from someone off-panel. A street urchin, eyes gleaming with mischievous anticipation, warned a blonde lady about something scarce if they delayed. A collision sent a young woman tumbling to the ground, a ball rolling away from her grasp as the startled man stammered apologies for his clumsiness. Another bystander rushed forward with concern, checking if the fallen woman was all right. Issel, the golden-haired girl in a modest dress, sat quietly, her green eyes filled with a subtle sadness. A horse-drawn carriage stood before a shimmering portal, bathed in an ethereal glow. The portal flared, intensifying its brilliance as if drawing the carriage into its depths. A horse-drawn carriage clattered through the sun-drenched streets of a bustling town, its rival heralded by the rhythmic clip-clop of hooves on cobblestone. A young woman with silver hair, adorned in a delicate, frilly dress, peered excitedly from the carriage window, announcing their arrival to her mother. A lady in a lavish gown gracefully descended from a magnificent carriage, assisted by a formally dressed gentleman. Catherine, eyes wide with wonder, gazed upon the sprawling palace and its meticulously manicured gardens, a soft whisper of wow. "It's beautiful," escaping her lips, observing ally in her finery. The gray-haired girl mused on the Ernst Duchy's financial woes and the stark contrast with the extravagant display before her. A regal blonde woman, dressed in a flowing gown, gestured towards a grand, ornate building, her tone implying gentle guidance to the younger, silver-haired girl beside her, who responded with respectful affirmation. In a grand, opulent dining room, a question hung in the air. "How have you been?" Heavy with unspoken tension, two elegantly dressed women gasped, their faces etched with concern, as they rushed towards the Grand Duchess, whose recent accident had become the talk of the town. A blonde woman, adorned in a flowing white gown, reflected on a fortunate turn of events, a miracle that had graced her life, while a silver-haired girl in yellow looked on with a pensive expression. A gasp rippled through the opulent room as the elegant woman in the blue gown, the Grand Duchess of Ernst, was formally announced. Duchess Serena D. Iberg, a vision in a sapphire blue gown, was announced, her golden eyes hinting at a hidden depth. The elegant lady, adorned in jewels and a fine gown, beamed a seemingly warm smile as she expressed her relief at seeing someone in good health. The elegantly dressed woman in blue confessed a slight sting of hurt at having been met by a physician instead of the person she clearly expected. Her gaze fixed onto other women, one in peach and another in gold. A dismissive remark about the physician hung in the air, unfinished and tinged with disdain. The blonde noblewoman addressed Catherine with a thinly veiled air of superiority, inquiring if she was indeed Blair from the lesser house. The dark-haired woman, a subtle smirk playing on her lips, apologized for her abrupt arrival, claiming her recent recovery as the cause. The blonde, adorned in a delicate white gown, readily offered her forgiveness with a bright, almost unsettling, smile. Someone called out urgently for Catherine, their voice laced with concern. A silver-haired woman, her violet eyes wide with a mix of surprise and apprehension, was prompted to greet a duchess she'd apparently encountered before. A nervous young woman in a yellow dress curtsied, stammering an introduction to the elegant lady in blue. Catherine, adorned with yellow ribbons and a delicate necklace, offered a sweet, almost mischievous smile, her purple eyes sparkling with a hint of secret knowledge. A woman with long dark hair and a delicate touch to her chin, adorned in a finely detailed dress, reacted to a compliment with a subtle almost knowing smile, the raven-haired woman gestured dismissively, indicating that the children were elsewhere, occupied with treats. With a mischievous glint in her eyes, the silver-haired young lady eagerly accepted the invitation to join the others, a playful smile spreading across her face. A woman in a peach-colored gown dismissed a thought, a subtle tension sparking between her and the other two ladies present. The woman in the yellow gown and the one in blue exchanged surprised glances at the unexpected response, with Catherine coming down with a regal-looking blonde, adorned in elegant white attire, mused that it would be best if the ailing girl stayed with her just in case it was contagious. A soft gasp escaped her lips, a flicker of surprise in her golden eyes. Catherine, eyes wide with disbelief and hurt, confronted the elegant blonde woman, her voice trembling with a mixture of confusion and accusation. The elegant woman in a lavish gown gasped, realizing her indiscretion with a sudden flush of embarrassment. As she remembered the presence of others, the silver-haired woman gasped, a hand flying to her mouth, as the blonde in a blush gown faced the consequences of a revealed deception. Resigned to the inevitable, the elegant woman with dark hair and a jeweled choker offered a polite postponement of introductions to the young lady. In a grand, opulent dining hall, bathed in sunlight filtering through arched windows, a group of elegantly dressed individuals partook in a seemingly tense meal, the flickering flames of the candelabras casting dancing shadows on their faces. In an opulent dining room, Ally, vibrant and animated, sipped her tea, while the silver-haired woman beside her sat stiffly, a barely touched drink in hand and a palpable tension in the air. A raven-haired woman in a ruffled blue dress offered a subtle, knowing smile to her companion across the elegantly set table, a silent communication passing between them. Sunlight glinted off the gilded windows of a grand stone building, hinting at the opulence within. A picturesque town, nestled at the foot of rolling hills and dominated by a tall, elegant tower, basked in the warm glow of the setting sun. A horse-drawn carriage, its interior illuminated, clattered through the cobblestone streets, its rival heralded by the rhythmic drumming of hooves. Catherine, seen from behind with her blonde hair elegantly styled, was asked if she had enjoyed her day, to which she quietly affirmed with a flash of defiance in her violet eyes. The silver-haired woman vehemently denied any involvement. The silver-haired young woman seethed, barely containing her fury at her future mother-in-law, the Duchess, imagining the satisfying chaos of overturning the tea table. A horse-drawn carriage materialized within a glowing, ornate archway, bathed in ethereal light, as if transported from another realm. A blonde noblewoman in a portrait, adorned with jewels and flowers, drew a gasp of admiration from an unseen observer, gazing at the fiery hues painting the sky. A sense of wonder washed over her, as she questioned if sunsets had always held such breathtaking beauty. A horse-drawn carriage clopped down a bustling village street as the setting sun cast long shadows and villagers paused in their evening routines, their hushed whispers echoing the arrival of someone important. Ally gazed at her reflection, a flicker of something unreadable in her bright eyes. A closer look at her face revealed a subtle surprise, her lips slightly parted as if about to speak. A flicker of recognition. The thought of silver blonde hair sparked curiosity as two figures hurried down a cobbled street, their footsteps echoing. In the quiet lane, a gasp escaped Ally's lips as a sudden realization dawned on her, her hand freezing mid-gesture as she stared at her reflection. A desperate cry of stop pierced the air as a majestic white horse reared up, its harness gleaming in the sunlight. A startled blonde woman, adorned in an elaborate gown, emerged from a grand carriage, questioning her title with a confused "Your Grace" as someone announced an urgent matter. With a curt nod, the top-hatted man ordered the coachman to deliver Catherine directly to the duchy without delay, and return immediately afterward. With a curt "Yes, Your Grace," the blonde noblewoman, her gown shimmering in the warm light, turned and strode purposefully away from the waiting carriage. The elegant blonde woman, adorned with pearls, regarded something or someone with a mixture of apprehension and quiet contemplation. With a thoughtful glance down a cobbled street at dusk, Ally recalled seeing them disappear in that very direction. Bathed in a soft, ethereal light, a lone figure, in a ruffled, peach-colored gown stood amidst the cobblestone courtyard, seemingly lost in thought or perhaps awaiting someone's arrival. A shadowy, deserted alleyway, bathed in the eerie glow of a twilight sky, hinted at a clandestine meeting or a dangerous secret. The elegant blonde woman, adorned with pearls and rubies, held her breath, her emerald eyes wide with a mix of apprehension and resolve. A grand, elegantly dressed woman paused before an orphanage, surprised by its presence in such a place, while her companion reassured her that it was still within the duchy's borders, and the most likely refuge for the one they sought. A gentle voice called out to the little girl clutching a stuffed dog, her wide eyes hinting at a mix of curiosity and apprehension. A voice inquired about a silver blonde girl, and a young woman in a grand gown hesitantly responded with a questioning yes, her expression a mixture of curiosity and uncertainty as to other girls. One clutching a teddy bear observed the interaction. One young woman, dressed in elegant attire, inquired about another with a hint of curiosity, prompting a dismissive shrug and a feigned ignorance from the girl with shorter hair. Ally, adorned in a delicate gown and holding a bouquet of roses, inquired with a subtle smile if anyone knew the whereabouts of a certain she, shielding her eyes from the setting sun. The young woman with the bob haircut searched the horizon with an expectant gaze. A small girl pointed excitedly down a path, alerting the elegant woman beside her to the presence of another, even smaller, child walking away. Having finished the laundry and tidied the desk, the golden-haired girl, basket in hand, pondered her next task with a determined air. With a melancholic gesture towards the peaceful countryside scenery, the blonde-haired girl questioned the meaning of it all. Despite her efforts, a bittersweet ache lingered in the young woman's heart, her downcast gaze reflecting a mixture of sadness and resignation. Their hands intertwined, a silent promise passing between them amidst the golden hues of the autumnal park. The elegantly dressed woman gazed down at the younger girl, a mixture of affection and concern in her eyes. As their hands met in a gentle clasp, the elegant blonde, adorned in jewels, seemed to flinch, a flicker of unease crossing her face. Her gaze softened, a question forming in her wide, emerald eyes as she looked upwards. A whisper escaped her lips, "Mother," laced with uncertainty and a touch of longing.